Shin is a 23-year-old diehard otaku who's recently left school to intern. It wasn't anything fancy, just a part-time job working at a cafe. He wasn't all that satisfied with how his workmates treat him as someone easy to bully. If only he knew this would happen, he would have properly studied his major in school. He continued walking upstairs, mumbling the words rip-off repeatedly. He was then greeted by a woman in a bunny outfit, making his nose bleed in fascination with her beauty. For a moment, he was ready to negotiate as he was drowned in thoughts of her body. But as she revealed her price, he woke up from his delusions and immediately refused. He continued going upstairs, leaving the woman confused. As he went on his way, he walked past a delivery man. They both were stunned as they stopped each other. The man displayed his flashy smile as he looked upon Shin, revealing the McDonald's delivery for him. However, it turned out that he ordered KFC instead, and the man got his order wrong. He continued walking on his way, contemplating one fact he verified about his physique. As he reached his apartment, he concluded that his appearance always confuses everyone. He seemed pissed as he faced the door to his unit. He grabbed the handle, but the door won't even budge. He gritted his teeth in exasperation. Lights then began flickering, then everything turned dark as the lights went out. He looked at the light bulb as the very last ember of its filament died out. He was then stunned. A creepy voice was speaking. He shivered in fear, thinking that he must be hallucinating. The creepy voice spoke of cryptic messages, completely petrifying him. The realization dawned on him, he wasn't hallucinating and there was a real ghost. He forced a smile, trembling as he looked back and politely told the ghost that he may have the wrong guy. But the creepy voice continued talking as if calling to him. Lightning flashed over the weeping sky as thunder roared. A crow can be seen perched atop as if a bad omen looking ominously over everything. The lightning continued with its rage as the crows flew away. Inside a church, believers of the mighty Ash Lord can be seen meeting. The Pope called to their revered god as they offered a sacrifice. A beautiful young woman named Reena can be seen tied up at the center of the sacrificial circle. The Pope looked at her with an evil smile. He continued muttering the strange incantations, those cryptic messages that called out the mighty Ash Lord. Tears flowed down from the sacrifice's eyes as purple light shone beneath her face. The sacrificial circle glowed, finally activating the summoning ritual. A believer trembled in disbelief. The sacrificial summon was finally a success. The Pope cried with tears of joy as he anticipated the descent of the Grand Lord of Ashes. The believers were delighted, chanting in unison the word before, calling for their beloved God. Their uncanny smiles grew wider, while lightning crackled outside the church. Reena looked up with sad eyes, knowing it might be her end. Tears of ecstasy fell from the Pope's cheeks. He said that it was a lived commodity this time, then urged the believers to get out as they weren't allowed to observe. A swirl of dimensional warp opened in space, while the pitiful woman looked at it anxiously. From there emerged the mighty figure of an otherworldly being. The woman trembled in fear as she called the Ash Lord's name. His face was so bright that it was hard to see his features, emitting a warm energy that rapidly melted the candle beside. Reena closed her eyes, not daring to look at him. She opened her eyes slowly. Their Shin was coughing as he found himself covered in smoke. He smiled awkwardly, calling for the ghost he was hearing earlier. He then noticed something that made him stop. A beautiful young woman was lying on the floor, all tied up. His nose began bleeding at the sight of what he thought was a beautiful ghost. But upon closer look, he realized that she doesn't really look like a ghost. He decided to untie her from the ropes that entangle her. The rope snapped. He raised and checked up on her. He poked her cheeks, asking if she was all right. He offered to take her to the hospital, but she did something weird that surprised him. The young woman knelt and bowed with her head touching the floor, revering him as the Grand Lord of Ashes. He said that she might have gotten the wrong guy and explained that he had a physique that confuses everyone, but the young woman was certain that she wasn't mistaken. He felt that this was more than the usual mistake and asked what kind of being he was. She then proceeded to describe him as a majestic and grand being. In her eyes, his mighty and otherworldly stature was beyond description. Shin stood there boasting his majestic and godly figure. His face shone so brightly like the divine being he is. However, his real appearance was that of a clueless lad. He asked if she was for real, frightening the young woman. She then fainted upon hearing his voice. Shin was wondering if he was being set up for blackmail. He put down his bag, then prepared a cup of coffee for the poor girl. He thought that he might have transmigrated like what he saw in manga and anime. Reena opened her right eye, trying to catch a secret glance. He saw this and knew that she was just faking her passing out. He concluded that he must have really transmigrated as a demon god in this world. He then told her to not be afraid and asked her name. She blushed. The mighty god really wanted to communicate with her lowly self. She revered him with his godly titles before introducing herself. Hearing her call him of titles, he decided to play along. He offered the cup of coffee and told her to not be so afraid of him. He wore a friendly smile, asking if she wanted to taste the coffee he prepared. It was a normal cup of coffee, but it seemed like a boiling elixir, the beverage of the gods. It seemed like a drink so divine that her lowly self couldn't even dare touch it. She looked at it, wondering if this was how her life would be taken as a sacrifice. Trembling, she reached for the coffee. She wore a serious look on her face and pledged to offer her life to him. Shin was dumbfounded. What is he even going to do with her life? He then cleared his throat and asked his identity and how he was summoned there. He demanded that she explain it honestly, or there will be consequences for lying. She trembled as she revealed that she was a sacrifice used to summon him. Hearing this, he concluded that he was indeed in another world, a world with a mysterious evil church that uses living sacrifices to summon the demon god. Strangely though, they accidentally summoned him over. The candle was dying out, signifying the end of his summon. Before the summon fully ended, he gave Reena a command. He smiled as the dimensional warp engulfed him. His orders were clear. Reena must properly and carefully live her life. She was surprised upon hearing this. All her life, she only heard remarks about how lowly and worthless her life was. Tears dripped down her cheeks. She was moved. She lifted her face and with a smile, she promised to fulfill the orders he gave her. Reena wore a confused look on her face, wondering why the Lord of Ashes gave her such a reward. She looked at the boiling elixir called coffee. Looking back as to how the said Lord has sent down his favor very few for the past millennium, she blushed as she came to a weird conclusion. The demon lord must be like smaller girls. He shook off those thoughts from her head as she knew she could never understand his intentions. She held the coffee elixir, smiling as she lifted it. The rain was pouring heavily, but those big and heavy drops evaporate as soon as they touched the barrier. Rianne was walking barefoot amidst the rain, but she wasn't getting wet thanks to the demon lord's protection. She glanced with admiration for his power that transcends even the natural world. She continued walking, saying that this was her first time being in the big city of Beeland. Thanks to the Ash Lord. She scanned the place with her curious eyes. She felt that something was off. She remarked that the area seemed to exude an unusual aura. She turned her head, planning to go back to the church as soon as possible. Meanwhile, continuous quaking was felt back in Shin's world. The shaking won't stop while the dimensional warp starts to form in the air. He then emerged from it, wondering where he was. He fell down the floor head first, earning him a bump on the head and made him faint. The next day, he woke up and realized that he passed out for the night. As he got up, he felt like the place seemed not from his earth. It was like he was still in the world of that weird cult. He then noticed something. There was a hanging photo inside the store. A woman then passed by and asked him for one lava cold brew. He wasn't sure if she was talking to him, to which she confirmed. Shin figured out that he was really mistaken for the photo inside the shop. His confusing physique once again came into play. Since he doesn't have anywhere else to go, he decided to help out until the boss arrived. The woman placed her orders, to which he happily complied. Time passed by quickly. A group of bodybuilders suddenly crashed through the place, surprising him. Time went by again and again. The door creaked open. Shin remarked that life is too unpredictable. His transmigration is proof of it. He continued cleaning the cups. He then realized that the boss hadn't come back the entire day, throwing all his work in vain. With this, he decided to use the room inside with food and bed as his salary for the day. Meanwhile, the crescent moon hid itself behind the clouds. Mysterious hooded figures can be seen calling for Dr. Norn. The door creaked open, spitting the image of a man who asked about the one who will undergo the remolding operation. The man in the hood smiled and confirmed. It was then revealed to be Reena. The interior of the place was eerie. Dr. Norn led the way to the underground operating room for the remolding operation. Reena was quiet, but she was wondering what this operation was about. They finally arrived while he asked for some time alone with her. The doctor also requested a leave behind the burning blood. One of the hooded men brought out a case remarking about this rare gift. The doctor smiled with anticipation. Reena laid down on the operating bed with a sad look on her face. The doctor ripped off a piece of clothing, exposing her arms. He told him to lay down properly as they are about to begin the operation. He attached the equipment to her arms, securing her in place. The doctor whipped out a syringe, pricking her arm as he began to inject the anesthesia. Reena closed her eyes, enduring the sting from the syringe. The doctor said that they will begin remolding once the anesthesia takes effect. He opened the box, revealing a bright red glow. Norn was surprised upon seeing its content. He exclaimed, this time sacrifice was actually such a success. What greeted him was the sight of the burning blood, the elixir of the gods. However, he couldn't help but think that the Lord of the Ashes liked silver hair and scarlet eyes. He frustratedly asked himself if blonde hair and blue eyes were unappealing to him. He then realized another thing. Maybe the demon lord just likes small girls. Knowing this, he concluded that she should indeed be made into a child of God. Reena was confused. What is a child of God? The doctor began by explaining it wasn't a genuine offspring of the divine, but rather a form of address within the order. This is done through injecting the burning blood, granting the chosen one with superhuman powers. He revealed to Reena that the operation should have been in the church, but the financiers of the order wanted to see the burning blood itself. He revealed that she will be the first among all them to transcend mankind. Reena will become the first child of God. He loaded the syringe with an amount of the burning blood, then injected it into her arms. He pushed the elixir into her veins, making them almost pop out from her skin. The elixir was fully injected. She began coughing blood, but she endured the pain. She clenched her fist, while her body began breaking down in unimaginable pain. The clenching of her fist subsided. Her face calmed down as she passed out. Non wondered if it was a failure, thinking that she wasn't the chosen one. He sighed, saying there was nothing special with silver hair and scarlet eyes. But then Reena spoke the name of the demon lord. She remembered his order to properly and carefully live her life. Though her eyes were closed, determination was etched on her face. Back at the coffee shop, Shin was wondering about how Reena was doing. He also doubted if the evil church was a serious organization. Suddenly, rumbling was felt at the place. He once again heard a voice. It was a familiar voice. He was being summoned again. Shin seemed delighted and was looking forward to seeing another beautiful woman once he's summoned. A wide grin flashed upon his face. He fixed his hair, taking on a fresh look in preparation for the summon. He did his best to look as manly as he could while waiting, but he grew tired of the long pause in the summoning incantation. His heart began thumping fast as if he was having a heart attack. Rays of light swirled around his hand as he gripped his chest, his face gritting as he endured the pain. He let go of his chest, wondering if that pain was because he impersonated the demon lord back then. Little did he know, his hand was emitting a faint glow of divine light. He felt like the heat in his chest earlier was redirected to his hand. He extended his hands, wondering if he could cast out flames right now. He stomped his feet as he prepared to try it out. He chanted as a spark of flame was cast out from his hand. He yelled the spell name, Crimson Blaster, summoning a massive flame that almost engulfed everything. He was almost speechless, then he bursted into shock as he realized that he almost burned down the entire building. He recalled back the flames, reverting them into the singularity. He stared intently at his hands, thinking that it indeed really works. He casted his fire, but this time in a moderate controlled manner. He then extinguished them. A smirk formed in his lips. He imagined himself as a powerful god as he wore that JoJo reference face. Teardrops flowed down his cheeks as he called to Alice of Tuba and said that he has been reborn. The image of the tuba formed within his flames. His eyes burned with unrelenting passion and admiration for Alice to the point that it felt ominous. The flaming image of the tuba winked at him, making him fall in love. The flames dispersed in thin air as he flopped to the bed. He wondered if he could also manipulate the form of the flame. He started by conjuring a letter and using his flames, followed by a letter B. Apparently, he meant to write badass. He also noticed that the fire blazes fiercely, but it doesn't feel warm at all. He pulled out a book, planning to test his newfound powers a little bit. He activated his flames upon the corner of the book, but the book remained completely intact. He couldn't believe it. There was no firepower at all. He decided to add a lot more fire, but the book was totally unscathed. He threw the book out of frustration. He has a fire ability that can't burn at all. He deemed it a waste of time. Back in the basement where the remolding operation was conducted, the door creaked open. The doctor seemed unhappy with the result of the operation. He went on his way to see his blonde-haired uncle first. Closing the door, he planned to take care of Reena later. But shortly after, the knob clack-led. The door opened and spat the image of a roughed-up Reena, who declared her success in becoming the child of God. She called the doctor, who was stunned as he looked back. Her face seemed sad as she once again called the doctor, who immediately rushed to her in delight as he held her shoulder. He was ecstatic. The fact that she was still alive means she had just succeeded. Reena wondered if she really had low chances of surviving. She clenched her fist, blushing as she realized that she was born for the Grand Lord of the Ashes. As the day concluded, they immediately urged for the notification of the High Priest to prepare the next ritual. Back at the coffee shop, Shin deemed it was time to bring out the real magic. It has been a month already since he transmigrated, and the boss has never come back. He continued doing things in his stead since he had nowhere to go anyway. He created a nice latte art, smiling as he enjoys being the boss of this place. But after rationally thinking over things for a month, he realized one thing. His face pale as tears flowed down his cold eyes. He wanted to go home already. He chugged down the latte art he made, then slammed the cup on the table. He frustratedly yelled and demanded to return his idol to him already. However, he was stuck in that place with no certainty of going back. Suddenly, he heard the weird summoning incantations once again, but it was for a short moment only. He was actually anticipating more, but then decided to close the shop and sleep already. Over his bed, Shin remarked that he managed to distinguish 7 distinct summoning incantations so far. He also seemed worried about facing a group of cultists after being summoned. If they ever recognized him as an imposter, that would mark his end. Averting his thoughts, he blushed as he remembered about the veteran Imperial College. He thought of the beautiful girls over there, making him blush even more. But these thoughts were put on a stop as he heard the incantations once again. He listened intently to these incantations as they seemed familiar. He then remembered that it was the very same incantation as the evil churches. A dimensional warp once again engulfed him. Lightning cracked over the rain pouring heavily outside the church. The high priest signaled the beginning of the ritual. He stood in the middle of the summoning circle as he called the titles of the demon lord. Behind him were the devout believers of the Grand Lord of Ashes kneeling. The high priest was looking forward to their god bestowing blessings to them once again. He knew that this was only meant to stir up the financiers of the church. He also disregarded Reena's words about the coming of God as a mere side of the story. Maybe it was out of envy or disdain, but he only sees her as nothing but a malicious brat. Reena then told them that that relic should be the import of today's ritual. These were relics that can only be supplied by the financiers. The high priest ordered them to send their oblations to the demon lord. He then went to the altar with the relic. It was a mysterious magical mask. He resumed the ritual and began calling the name of their god. Gusts of wind blew strongly upon the place, extinguishing the light from the candles. The heavy rain kept pouring outside, while the high priest wore his evil smile as the summoning circle glowed. However, doubts crept upon him as he noticed the strange silence. He can no longer hear the rain outside. He looked at Reena. He was in total disbelief that what she said might really be true. She lifted her face and called the Lord of Ashes. The summoning circle glowed purple as the ritual went on. Everything then began to shake, leaving the high priest scared out of his wits. As he looked ahead, he was greeted by a dimensional warp forming in the air. He was then surprised, while Reena was delighted. The financiers expressed their delight at the descent of the demon lord. He stood there once again, boasting his otherworldly majesty. Shin stood once again, looking like a mighty god in front of the cult believers. They were surprised that he really descended. Reena casually, but politely spoke to him. The demon lord's face shone brightly as usual, followed by him unleashing a warm gust of energy. The high priest called his name, pleading with him to quell his anger. But suddenly, Shin excused himself for the intrusion. He smiled, clarifying that he wasn't actually angry and was just feeling uneasy. He asked them why he was being summoned right now. He was then surprised as she noticed something. It was Reena smiling at him. He seemed happy that she was now dressing well. Even her complexion and overall appearance looks better now. He was relieved to see that his oracle last time came into effect. However, the high priest didn't seem to understand what the Lord had just said. He was sweating beads as he didn't know what to do. How would he reply when he didn't hear him clearly? He thought that the Lord would punish him for not returning his words. At the height of his desperation, he thought of changing the subject by bringing up the offerings. He immediately went on with this plan and offered the mask relic. Shin wondered what all this commotion was about. He then concluded that the guy in the front must be the high priest. He saw him shed tears, making him wonder what would happen if he realized he was an imposter. However, the reason he was crying turned out to be because he was afraid that he made the Lord angry. He looked down, thinking about what to do. He then spoke, calling them foolish mortals as he accepted those oblations they offered. The mask floated on its own, making its way in front of Shin. He was surprised to see that this mask can actually fly. He reached for the mask, surprising the believers that he actually accepted the sacrifice. He unleashed a massive amount of energy, which the believers misinterpreted as the Lord being excited. Hearing this, the high priest cried with tears of joy. He can now finally live. Though, they were wondering why hasn't the Lord left yet. The high priest realized that her descent always became an omen for something tremendous. Thinking about the reason he descended right now and was pondering so hard over something, the high priest grew pale at the thought that the Lord thinks of destabilizing the whole world. He called out to his title and begged for his oracle to be delivered. Suddenly, Reena chimed in and called the Lord. She revealed that these people weren't devout followers, but liars who violated his oracle. The high priest angrily turned to her and started berating her for being an orphan. Reena was furious upon hearing his words. She felt a sharp pain in her chest, making her feel weak as she clutched it. Suddenly, smokes filled the room. The voice of Shin, who was seen as their lord, reverberated. It was full of rage as he unleashed his fiery wrath for violating his oracle. The believers almost passed out from sheer amount of energy. Shin gritted his teeth. Looks like his oracle from last time wasn't that effective. He activated his fire ability, unleashing a massive flame above him. He told them that no one should offend Reena, the one he chose for the grand mission. The high priest was utterly terrified by his divine wrath. The flames showed him the visions of destruction that they are going to go through. Though he tried to shake them off his illusions, he was still sweating beads out of dread. Shin asked if they heard his words clearly, to which the high priest immediately submitted himself to his oracle. He began recalling his flames. As he went back, he told everyone to not summon him when they have nothing to do. Reena gasped. She realized that the Lord isn't an evil god at all. She then smiled and concluded that it must be the case. The rain continued pouring outside, signaling the high priest that the Lord had already left. The believers began panicking as if they had gone insane from standing in his divine presence. Norn came into the scene and asked what the commotion was about. He turned to the high priest, who told him that they needed to leave the place immediately. They deemed that it would be too inconvenient for them if even a few upperclassmen lost their minds. The doctor was enraged as he grabbed his collar and demanded. The high priest's eyes glowed purple as he commanded him to kneel. A dark force can be seen pulling him down, forcing him to do as he said. The priest held his shoulder and clarified something. He began by mentioning the girl, Reena. Turns out that only she was the one who truly understands the Lord. She was so happy that she couldn't help but let out chuckles, leaving the high priest speechless. He then told her to come, to which she immediately agreed to. The high priest told everyone that Reena is an object of divine favor and must be respected. He smiled and said he will personally instruct her as she takes on this heavy responsibility. She was speechless for a moment, then clenched her fist. She angrily told him that she doesn't need his instructions. 1 week later, a man named Brian found himself in the cafe as he tracked the aura of the Lord. He felt that the intense aura was coming from Shin, wondering what kind of existence he is. The lad enthusiastically came to him and asked what drink he would like to have. After hearing that it was black coffee, he gave him a hospitable smile and promised to prepare it. The feeling was immense for Brian. It was as if he was a kin of the Lord. He questioned his identity, wondering if he was there to stop him. Meanwhile, Shin went to prepare the order. However, he couldn't get his mind off of the thought of the cultist figuring out his identity. He then exclaimed, alarming Brian of something. There wasn't a sliver of aura from him as he served his coffee. He thanked him as he received it, then straight up gulped the hot coffee, bottoms up like its heat was nothing. He confirmed that it was a normal coffee and not a potion, leading him to conclude that he wasn't the enemy. With innocent curiosity, Shin asked about the paper cranes inside the jar. Brian revealed that they were all made by his daughter for every wish she had. Shin jokingly said that the kit must have quite a number of desires. He said that they would fulfill the wishes inside whenever they had the chance, but he dropped a sad revelation. He waited, but such a chance never came. Turns out this was a relic left behind by his deceased daughter. Shin patted his shoulder and apologized, to which he brushed it off. He said that it's better to let go of some things, but Brian knew that could he never stop thinking about his daughter. He then wore a serious look on his face, determined as he began scheming something. He then apologized once again and said that everyone has their own way of grieving. He closed his eyes, seems like he's not someone who plans to stop him. Brian stood and introduced himself, to which Shin also did the same. Before he left, he happily told him to come again often. As he left the shop, he wondered where he came from. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Ryan grew anxious as he touched his shoulder, anticipating that he would still make a move, but he was just there to remind him that he hasn't paid yet, to which he immediately did. He confirmed that he really was just there to take the payment and not to stop his plans. He shook off those thoughts. At least, he wasn't hostile to him. As he walked, he thought that he'd never hesitate to use the kin of the Lord as sacrifices. He was ready to incur the wrath of the god just to resurrect his daughter. Oh, the things we do for love. Shin was seen reading a book about the Lord of Ashes, gathering all kinds of information about him. He then remarked that this sounded like some kind of cartoon plot. He added that some parts of the book were even incomprehensible. He checked the other books, learning more about the Lord's countless titles. He closed his eyes, realizing he fooled around with a ritual involving countless titles. He remembered his passed-down ancient book back then, wherein he followed a ritual written in there. The table was turned a few times, then he read out the spell in the book. As the spell was over, he removed the slip with his name written on it. The next day at the same time, he removed the leftover slips of papers. But after waiting in the warehouse for a night, he was disappointed that nothing happened. He's now wondering if that ritual had something to do with his transmigration. As he played with his flame, he felt like his future would be riddled with danger. He then conjured a powerful warrior out of his flame. But even so, this flame has no real power and can only be used for bluffing. He grew frustrated. He already transmigrated, but he was still so pathetic. He glanced at the side, noticing his mask. As he held it, the mask seemed nothing special. He continued holding it and stared at it. As he let it go, it actually merged with his shadow. He was surprised upon seeing this, then quickly went to find a mirror. If his guess was correct, this mask has the ability to change his appearance. Black smoke engulfed his head as he activated the mask's ability, gradually altering features. After a while, he managed to copy Brian's exact facial appearance. He also wondered if his figure and clothes could transform too, to which he tested and figured out he could as well. Tears of joy streamed down his face. It was a dream come true. Then he once again heard the summoning incantations. He looked up as the Lord of Ashes titles were being recited, noticing that the wording seems a bit different now. At a remote place, it was revealed that Brian was the one conducting ritual. One of his comrades was watching from behind as he recited the chants. He held a knife by its blade as he went on with the ritual, attempting to summon one of the ancient gods, an omniscient and omnipotent god who bestows knowledge in exchange for adequate offerings. He does not care about the consequences anymore. He just wanted to resurrect his daughter. The strip of paper he was holding began fluttering in the air, releasing an enormous amount of white fog within the ritual area. Ryan's eyes turned silvery white, while strange divine words came to his vision. These incomprehensive words began taking form until he was able to read it. He realized that he was asking him about his current form. A silhouette emerged from the smoke. It was Shin who took the appearance of Brian himself. His girl comrade knelt to the floor, eyes weary as she tried to keep them open amidst the white fog. The silhouette of an indescribable being can be seen behind the translucent smoke, its presence enough to make her faint. Brian remarked that the white heavenly fog title has no spoken meaning. With this, he explained the answer to the god's question about his current form. The words on the fog transformed, confirming the correctness of the answer he gave. Shin said it was the perfect answer as he gave him a thumbs up. Brian smiled, saying he's finally crossed the decisive point. He then brought up his desire to give him a chance to resurrect his daughter. Brian revealed his offering, the burning chaos seed. But upon hearing the gods say it was an abomination, he was surprised. He never expected that Brian would be willing to go through these lengths just for his daughter. He recognized the need to keep the act and be cautious until the summon is over. He proceeded to tell him that he accepted the sacrifice he had prepared. The chaos seed began shrinking as it went to Shin, reverting back to its egg seed form. As he received the offering, he was delighted and said it wasn't half bad. Meanwhile, Brian himself couldn't help but be terrified of the god's power. He gritted his teeth and closed his eyes, then pleaded for him to grant him a means to resurrect his daughter. Shin knew that it was his goal of summoning him in the first place. Looking upon him, he realized how dearly Brian treasures his daughter. However, he knew that he didn't have the capability to resurrect her. Consulting the Book of Pantheon, there were different intents within the world's existence. One of them was Cup, the one that serves as the Lord of Ashes intent. As he plays the part of the white heavenly fog, he must reward Brian with knowledge. He contemplated hard about what knowledge must he bestow upon him, to which he thought of giving him a cipher for a foolproof and fail-safe plan. Brian was wondering why there wasn't a response, thinking that his sacrifice might have been inadequate. His face was full of anticipation, but then the cipher from the white heavenly fog emerged. He cleared his throat, then he started narrating about a fish who can change itself and become a bird. It was an excerpt from a Taoist text in real life. Brian's eyes glowed azure. He was being enlightened. He read the seemingly cryptic text that formed in front of him with complete understanding. He was lost in the text, his eyes seeing through the real essence of the white fog's revelation. The ultimate purpose wasn't to resurrect, but rather to achieve the soul's eternity. Such knowledge was instilled deep in his mind, making him feel refreshed. The white fog began fading away together with Shin, who was delighted. Brian was finally enlightened and saw the error of his ways. He clenched his fist, realizing that the Lord's purpose was to entrust such a level of comprehension in his hands. Back at the coffee shop, Shin returned from the summon with a perfect superhero landing. He smiled with confidence, saying he managed to not be a newbie back then. He checked his phone for time, then realized that the white heavenly fog is an exterior god of the 23rd hour. He was wondering if there will be other summons in the future. He took note of the summon this time, the name of the summoner, and his purpose. He also took a photo of the summoning place. Turned secretly took a photo of the place despite the risk. He then checked out if he gained new powers this time. He raised his hand and yelled out, but nothing happened. He seemed disappointed that he didn't gain any power-ups this time around, but he still commended the masked disguising effects. He then remembered that he had the burning chaos seed. He grinned upon seeing it, then decided to keep it in a box for future purposes. He put the box in the drawer and shut it close. It was nighttime. Shin was sleeping soundly. The drawer began opening, and the burning chaos seed exited by itself. The seed was then engulfed in fire, transforming it back to its original massive form. As it smelled the white fog coming out of Shin, its pupil dilated as it was alarmed. It looked upon the sleeping lad who was exuding a familiar comforting aura. It recognized that it was the Lord of Ashes aura. It leaned closer to him who was deep in his slumber. The creature began quivering as Shin yawned, immediately storming out of the room. It went outside the shop, wondering about the place he was in. It suddenly began glowing with a fiery aura covering its whole body. It then transformed into a cat. It wore that cute look on his face then went off. George was one of the 7th-grader investigators in Nolan. They were those investigators who could handle crisis on their own. Given this, he was admired by the new recruits of the Anti-Magic Bureau. He then asked the voice on the other line to get to the point. The voice on the line said that he was just a regular human. He continued walking amidst the rain, while the voice confirmed that the shop owner was totally ordinary. He added that he was annoyingly good-looking. The voice on the other line told him to investigate Shin according to the standard procedures of the Anti-Magic Bureau. George recognized the seriousness of the situation as the whole case was highly confidential. He remembered a believer losing his mind and muttering the appearance of the evil god. He smiled, saying that the worst outcome isn't the evil god's appearance, but rather the destruction of humanity. He pulled out a paper from his pocket, remarking that it was a shame as he stared at it. It was a blurry picture of Reena. As usual, Shin went on with running the coffee shop. George threw dagger stares at him while he prepared his things. After analyzing, he was able to confirm that he was indeed normal and that there was nothing much to investigate. Shin came to serve the latte, to which the old man asked if he had seen any strange things around. He was alarmed upon hearing his question, but played it cool and said that the weather has been unusually pretty bad lately. George thanked him for the answer. Time passed by quickly. George had to bid his farewell already. Shin looked at him with inquisitive eyes as he left. He heaved a sigh of relief. He seems like an ordinary guy. Suddenly, his fingers twitched. He's feeling a chill inside him. It was like he was awakening new powers. It seems like it was a delayed awakening of his powers. He extended his hands to test it out, but he couldn't fire it out. However, he could feel it and even control it inside his body. Suddenly, his body has turned into steam. He can now move his body in a vapor state. After testing it for a moment, he returned to his normal form. He deemed the ability more useful in flames since it can help him escape. Suddenly, George swung the door open. Shin played it cool and asked why he was back. It was a close call. He would have been exposed if he came in just a moment earlier. The old man revealed that he detected the scent of an evil god emanating from the place. He wore a serious look. Looks like he misjudged him. Upon looking at him for the second time, he was exuding intense amounts aura. He was having second thoughts as to why he even came back to check such a horrifying power. He felt suffocated as if he was a small boat being tossed in a wavy ocean. Shin politely offered him another cup of coffee, to which he smiled and ordered another cup of latte. He then said that he ran out of ingredients and excused himself to check the bag. Shin was panicking as he shut the door close. Did he notice? He was wondering whether to confess or deny it. He scratched his head in frustration. He must come up with something to fool him. Meanwhile, George knew that he didn't really run out of ingredients. This made him more confused. He wanted him to come back by emitting a strong godly scent. He wondered what he was trying to achieve. He then suddenly saw a phone on the countertop, leading him to assume that he must have wanted him to check it out. He picked up the phone. He opened it, then browsed through the applications. He saw photos of cats in the phone gallery. His face softened, realizing he must have really liked cats. As he continued browsing the photos, he was stunned as he came across something. It was a picture showing a part of the summoning circle that Shin took earlier. Looking at it, he was determined to find out what his message meant. Shin returned from the back of the kitchen, saying he brought the ingredients already, but then he found that George had already left. He wondered if he was really in such a hurry. Back at the place where Brian conducted the ritual, the door of the abandoned castle opened. George was there. It was the place he saw on Shin's phone. He remarked on the thick residual aura of an exterior god all over the place. He then noticed something. From behind the thick fog was a silhouette of a humongous monster. He can tell that the aura that surrounds the place wasn't the Lord of Ashes. Suddenly, the burning chaos sea emerged from behind the smoke, charging forward to attack him. He managed to evade and gain his footing. He then kicked his footing, propelling him in air as he looked down on the humongous lizard. Not minding his upside-down orientation, he casually activated his skill. Blade number 3. A little knife was then summoned on his hands. He threw it amidst his awkward position. The giant lizard swerved, looking at the knife as it approached. However, it missed the lizard's head a little. George didn't seem to mind that his attack missed and landed nonchalantly. The burning chaos seed opened its mouth to devour him, but the confident old man only closed his eyes, knowing it was already his victory. The blade from earlier, which was thought to have missed, struck its head. He then chanted, "Extract and utilize." The blade returned to his hand while the head of the burning chaos seed was left with a wound to the head. The giant lizard immediately left the place, but its attempts at escaping were pointless. The veteran investigator. He threw his dagger, speeding through the air for quite some time, then instantly vanished into thin air. From some remote and random place, a desperate and agonizing screech was heard. He then chanted again, "Extract and utilize." He once again threw his dagger, then repeated the chant again. He began a merciless cycle of throwing his dagger, then recalling it once again. He remarked that the enemy was a hard one to deal with. He flexed 2 of his fingers, 2 of his toes, as well as half of his face. He did all these as a condition to raise his attack power since his affinity is too poor. A sorcerer would have a better chance at hunting the lizard, reminding him of Brian. The chaos seed is the Lord's kin. The white heavenly fog was summoned there previously. This information led him to conclude that there was someone pulling the strings from behind. He contacted the headquarters and said that the enemy's risk rating is set to untouchable. 2 months later, an ember was seen floating amidst the rain. It traveled past the buildings, finding its way inside the coffee shop. Shin determined that he can perceive information using this flame within 300 meters. The next, he will try a different skill. He aggressively punched the table, then activated his mystization ability. He realized that there were a lot of flaws in this ability as well. He then activated his flame ability, determining that he has both the power to release and transform. After testing all those abilities in his arsenal, he called it a day. As he laid in bed, he thought of George, who came back a few days ago. He remembered how he wore a meaningful expression every time he told him stories of the other world. He finds it a good thing that he has a superhuman friend like him. He could use his help soon when his identity was exposed and he was getting hunted down. After he fell asleep, he found himself in a strange dream. Everything in the place was composed of ashes. He then saw Reena from a distance. He approached her, who seemed to be out of it. Since this was just a dream, Shin decided to play around a little and squeezed her face. Suddenly, the pillars of the domain started crumbling. He remarked that the dream seemed to not last long. He patted Reena's head, saying they would meet again soon. Meanwhile, at the villa, Reena's voice echoed in the late night. She managed to successfully contact the Lord of Ashes in her dreams. She then felt a sharp heat from her back. As she checked it, she discovered the insignia bestowed to her by the Lord of Ashes. The rain continued pouring heavily. Shin was contemplating about his odd meetings with Reena. Outside the shop, a hooded figure was planning to go in. Just as he celebrated for not being recognized by Reena and the cult, the door creaked open. He welcomed the customer, only to see that it was Reena. He panicked upon seeing her, but Reena seemed to not recognize him. She wondered what drink she would order. He gritted his teeth. How could she know that he lived here? He assumed that the cult members must have some special means to do so. Now that it has come to this, he talked to her and said she had finally come. He was still thinking that Reena recognizes him as the exterior god. But in reality, she does not have any inkling of who he was. He continued misinterpreting the situation and asked her what the issue was. When it was revealed that she had nothing in mind, he was confused. He held his chin, thinking that she doesn't seem to have any malicious intent at all. He changed the topic and offered her a cup of coffee. He enthusiastically suggested that she try vanilla latte as it befits her age. Reena wondered what was going on. He seems to know her quite well. However, Shin wasn't over with misinterpreting the situation and thought she was shocked to see a god. Meanwhile, Reena felt the thick aura of the Lord of Ashes in the place. She then squinted her inquisitive eyes and silently questioned his identity. The coffee was finally served. He then told her that she must wonder why he was there, but Rin revealed she just followed the aura of the Lord of Ashes. That's when it finally hit him. She never recognized him in the first place. Everything now makes sense since he possessed that aura, which he never knew how to suppress. He thought that he could pass himself off as a divine messenger since she didn't know his identity. Reena was enjoying the coffee that was served to him when suddenly Shin threw her a towel to wipe her hair since it was all soaked. He then said that the Lord always watches all. The door once again opened as another customer came in. It was George, surprising him. He was sweating beads upon seeing him casually come in with a body soaked in blood. He then grew pale at another realization. Reena was there and he must not let the two of them meet. He welcomed George with an awkward gesture of hospitality as he led him to a separate area. George didn't find it suspicious and was rather moved. They went to the room as they discussed the supernatural. Shin heaved a sigh of relief that he seemed to have not noticed her. He then revealed that he came here to ask for a favor. He smiled and agreed, then volunteered to get him a cup of coffee first before they discussed the details later. George was hesitant, but he still agreed and thanked him. He went out of the room with a smile, saying that the bill needs to be determined too. As he closed the door, he thought that he quickly had to get rid of Reena. He quickly and soundlessly approached her, surprising her. She then revealed that they were facing a crisis and wanted to summon the Lord once again. He only told her that she just needed to have faith in the Lord's ability to solve such a dilemma. He tried to cheer her up and preached on her, to which she reacted nonchalantly. Shin said that the Lord is ensuring her success, but there was no place for her at the coffee shop for now. He then came back to George as he had successfully gotten rid of Reena. George pulled out a photograph from his coat, saying he needed help in finding someone. He handed the photograph to him, utterly shocking the young lad. It was none other than the blurred photograph of Reena. Shin couldn't think of a way to help his search since they were accomplices now. He agreed to help him though on the condition that he was given a chance to meet that girl. Hearing this, George immediately thought that he indeed came to the right person. He asked in what way he could ever repay this favor, to which he gave a vague response. He pouted, thinking that he'd rather give him a relic to make up for his favor. He then promised to bring a gift sufficient enough to repay him as he stood and bade his farewell. He finally left the place, leaving Shin in a dilemma. Meanwhile, a girl named Yana was seen on the rooftop. She turned back as she heard her master call for her. It was Brian, asking her what she wanted to discuss. She blushed as she hesitated speaking, but she spoke in no time and revealed that she wanted a little more compensation this time. She threw all kinds of excuses she had and asked for an increase in pay. Brian seemed helpless as he agreed, making Yana jump in delight. He remembered Shin, the mysterious guy from the coffee shop, who was unmoved by worldly luxuries. They then immediately proceeded to conduct the summoning ritual. Brian offered his blood in the middle of the summoning circle as he recited the summoning incantations. Yana was shivering as she grew pale. She couldn't watch the ritual. From the smoke emerged a familiar silhouette. It was Shin taking Brian's appearance with an apologetic look on his face as he can't resurrect his daughter. However, it turns out that he summoned him for a different purpose this time. He asked if he desired more of his knowledge, to which he immediately declared his hunger for it. He replied that what he desired will naturally come on the condition that suitable sacrifices are presented. Brian immediately agreed and said he will offer a suitable sacrifice. He took out the revolving fate ring, a distortion-grade relic that increases luck. He accepted the offering, looking forward to using it in case he needed to pay bills. Meanwhile, a figure of a blonde kid can be seen approaching, then she pushes the door open. As Shin and Brian thought of how the ritual would progress, a voice was heard calling from behind. It was Eve, Brian's deceased daughter. Yana half opened her eyes and asked who it was, only to see the silhouette of another terrifying creature behind the smoke. She immediately fainted upon witnessing it. Meanwhile, Eve narrated how she felt in waking up from such a long slumber. She added that she felt cold and chilly as she rose back to life. Shin smirked. Brian was really able to resurrect his daughter. He had no idea how it happened, but at least he'll increase his faith even more. He then told him that he wanted a more outstanding sacrifice next time he summoned him. He took it as the Lord being dissatisfied with his sacrifice that he wasn't given forbidden knowledge. Meanwhile, Eve chimed in and said that she felt as if someone was watching him. He gritted his teeth, the white heavenly fog eyes for his daughter to be offered as a sacrifice. He glanced at her, then corrupted evil smiles formed in his lips as he thought obtaining new knowledge. Eve tapped her father's back, asking what was wrong with him. Only then he was able to come to his senses. He cried as he called her name. He hugged his daughter tightly, apologizing as he promised to protect her by all means. She smiled, assuring her father that she will stay by his side. Brian's eye reflected that of fury. He called out to the master of creation and promised a better sacrifice next time aside from his daughter. However, it was revealed that he just accidentally looked at his daughter. Brian knelt amidst the fog, informing the Lord of a mysterious disaster-grade relic. He never wanted to involve himself with cultists, but he no longer had an option. Delighted laughter was heard at the coffee shop. Shin was glowing so divine in his mist form. His ability has finally strengthened. He then reverted back to his normal form, thinking it was a shame that he didn't know how to use the ring Brian gave him. He wondered if this was a good time to purchase books on the occult. He then slapped himself upon realizing what he had just said. He thought of indirectly approaching George to make him reveal the ring's function. He then picked up his raincoat. It was a custom-made raincoat with Alice's face on it. He smiled, saying that his raincoat was definitely worth the price. Shin then found himself in the middle of the heavy rain. He then took a bus, bringing out his phone as he planned to go to the outskirts of the Beeland region. He browsed through his phone, saying that there must be some sort of skyway like what was shown in the photo. The global city was divided into 4 districts: Financial Capital, Palace, Industrial East, and Residential District. Each district was bordered by high walls, to which Shin found himself standing on the same wall. He couldn't imagine anyone coming to the observation deck in this bad weather, but there was another hooded figure at the place. It was Ling. She threw a side glance at him, assessing his appearance. Shin distanced himself and ignored her since he had more important things to take care of. He whipped out his binoculars and scanned the place. He saw the villa owned by Brian. He continued adjusting the lenses to get a closer view. He was trying to gather evidence to report to George if Brian ever found out that he was an imposter. He then saw Yana riding the bus on its way to the Bedard Imperial College. Learning this, he deduced that Brian must also have connections to the academy. He returned his glances to the girl from earlier, wondering if she had any secrets, but he decided not to push forward his suspicions and head back. Meanwhile, the girl wondered what his identity was as she felt the heavy and deep aura of the Lord. She closed her eyes. She almost drew her blade out. A man in black umbrella then approached and asked if she was his new partner. It was George asking if she really was just a senior high schooler, but Lane clarified that she was already a first-year college student. However, he seemed not impressed at all and continued whining, prompting the young girl to snap as she explained her circumstance. He just cleared his ears in response. Seeing that he wasn't impressed, Ling began introducing herself as a B-rank investigator with 10 years of experience. Still, it wasn't enough to impress the veteran investigator. He began discussing the issue at hand. The cult order will be holding another summon within the city, sacrificing countless lives. Ling asked him to tell the details along the way, prompting the veteran to ask where she was going. She replied that she's off to have her dinner paid for. When asked why, she showed her fingers and started counting. First reason, the senior must take the newcomer out to eat. Second reason, he has a higher ranking, which means he had better compensation compared to her. He didn't let her finish counting anymore and immediately agreed, inviting her to his favorite coffee shop. She replied that anywhere is fine as long as she can eat. Back at the shop, Shin was washing himself after getting soaked in the rain. His head exuded black smoke, and it turns out he changed his appearance. Suddenly, he heard George's voice. He enthusiastically came out of the bathroom as the business had arrived. George continued calling, but there was no response. Ling said that the man he spoke of doesn't seem to be around. But in no time, a voice was heard making her turn around. It was Shin exuding an immense amount of aura from the Lord. She was surprised, her eyes reflecting fury and hatred for the Lord. The vision of a flaming book was seen with people losing their minds amidst the fire. Flames were engulfing the whole place. It was an unpleasant memory of when she first wielded her sword. She gritted her teeth, trying her very best to drive such unpleasant thoughts away. Shin spoke, implying he never expected a senior high school student to be put on assignment. Lane fell silent. She remembered that they must prioritize observation and communication for the time being. She closed her eyes and tried her very best to hold back. She was pissed as she clarified that she was already a college student. However, George started making fun of her while Shin remained smiling. Veins were popping off from her face. She was angry. The veteran began steering the discussion as he brought up his favor last time. Shin suggested they order coffee first before delving with the details. Ling was still pissed as she read the menu, though her eyes were sparkling in awe. She ordered an overwhelming amount of desserts. Her coffee wasn't even included yet. As she doesn't know much about coffee, she let him decide for her. He assured her that he'll get everything prepared properly for her. He then went off, eyes sparkling with the thought of earning money. George whined that she might waste a lot, to which she said they would just pack what's left. She didn't seem to care about it costing a lot of money since it was his treat anyway. She proceeded to justify that there were operational funds they could receive for the mission. He heaved a sigh, asking why she was acting like a pauper. She said that she can't be too hasty since she had a lot of things to spend money on. The next thing George knew was that she was already munching on the food she had ordered. He turned to Shin, asking if he already found any leads. Shin smiled and told him that they must get on the same page first. George told him that the exterior god is a big threat to the city. He sighed thinking about the worst possible scenario. Knowing that he was the exterior god being summoned, Shin was afraid that his identity might be exposed. He thought hard about the situation, recalling the report given by Reena about the group called Tranquil. He asked George if that name rings a bell to him, surprising the veteran that he really knows everything. The old man can only tell him that they were most likely behind the previous attacks on the bureau. He then whipped out a gift, expressing his desire to pay off his debt already. Shin wondered if accepting the gift meant being obligated to help him find Reena. Ling continued munching on the food as the old man asked why he was hesitant. He smiled and assured them that the girl in the photo was not a bad person. George stood up and thanked him for the report, then urged Ling to get going with him already. She asked for her leftovers to be packed, but it was revealed that they do not offer take-home boxes there. An awkward silence ensued amidst the pile of plates, followed by her aggressively grabbing the last piece of cupcake. Meanwhile, a mysterious-footed man can be seen standing amidst the rain. It was Shin, planning to use his mist ability to infiltrate the central library. Even with security windows, he can slip through thanks to his ability. Strange sounds were heard from the comfort room. As he got out, he's already changed his face using his mask. He was then greeted by a lot of books at the library. As he scanned, he found the book he was looking for. He started checking out the records of the Chaos Ashes Order. He flipped through the pages of the book, then realized that he could never perform at that level of godly powers. It was also revealed that the Chaos Order had so much power and glory, but it was short-lived. He then returned the book to its shelf, then continued loitering around to search for other books. He stumbled upon a 100-year-old book named Language of Silence, then learned that solving the issue of life after death would enable a cult to attract a lot of followers. As he was immersed in reading, a familiar figure was seen walking in. Shin was too busy gathering information about the Tranquil, sweating beads as he realized the gravity of the situation. The familiar man called out to Arthur, not knowing it was actually Shin in disguise. He called to him who was growing frustrated. Only then he realized that Arthur must be the name of the student he had changed into. When he looked, it was Brian. Turns out, he indeed stumbled into an old friend. Looking at Brian, Shin thought that he wasn't used to his scholarly disposition. He awkwardly made an excuse. Suddenly, his eyes sparked as he thought of an idea to escape. He acted as if he was dizzy, saying that his sickness is acting up again. He then said that it's better for a fever-ridden person to not go out on rainy days in the first place. He also noticed the book on his hands, then asked if he was interested in occult as well. He smiled awkwardly, saying he found these kinds of books fascinating. Brian then told him that he was never that serious about his math classes. He returned the book back to its shelf, then hastily excused himself, and said he wasn't feeling better. But before he could go, Ryan invited him to walk with him. He told him to wait, as he had to set some things down in the activity room. Shin never thought he'd meet him there. He deduced that Brian is most likely a math professor or a general lecturer. He also deduced that his assistant, Yana, must be a student from here. He thought that as a senior professor, he should be logically hitting it off with the upper class. Seeing his different side, he guessed that the academy is unaware of his other identity. Ryan came back after a short while and urged that they get going. The rain continued pouring heavily. They were walking amidst the heavy rain, prompting Shin to ask why he dressed like that in such weather. The professor did not reply, making him feel uncomfortable. His brows furrowed, wondering what was about to happen. He then said that the book he just read right now was mystifying, but has no substance. Brian can only reply with a thrift interjection, making Shin grow even more wary of his unusual behavior. As they continued walking, Brian revealed that he had just confirmed that the Real Arthur was still at home. He pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket, activating his very convenient intangible technique. The slip of paper with strange letterings hovered amidst the rain. It seems to have slightly crumpled by itself. Brian then asked who he was and what was the reason he was there. Shin's face was serious. He had been busted. The professor snapped his fingers, magically stopping the raindrops in the air. With menacing eyes, he threatened to kill him if he didn't answer. An astonishing curtain of raindrops was formed over him. Shin looked alarmed by the sudden escalation of the situation. A magic circle was then conjured over the city. Brian asked him what his decision would be, but then the insignia on his right hand suddenly glowed, surprising him as he recognized the familiar aura. What was there before him was the immense aura of the white heavenly fog. Actually, he felt that it was somewhere in between the aura of white heavenly fog and the Lord of Ashes. He dispersed the magic circle he had just activated, revealing to him that he only meant to test him and not harm him in any way. Meanwhile, Shin was surprised to hear that Brian sensed the aura of the exterior god when he used his mist ability. He finally learned that they perceived the divine aura that corresponds to the ability he uses. He then remembered Ling. She must have been shocked that morning at the observation deck. He passed himself off as a messenger of the Lord and asked why he joined the Tranquil. He revealed that they promised a disaster-grade relic which he can offer to the Lord. Brian asked for the Lord to not lay his eyes on Eve. He agreed and gave him an oracle to betray the Tranquil and write their information into the language of silence. He didn't know what it was for, to which he only replied with a serious and intimidating look. He had no choice but to bow his head and comply. Shin walked past him, leaving him all apologetic to his old friend as is betraying them. He's normally against betrayal, but not when his daughter is at stake. Back at the coffee shop, Shin was wondering why George hasn't come back for the past 2 days. He wanted to report that everyone is in danger of dying because of the Tranquil. The memories of Reena from last time flashed in his mind, prompting the customer to lean forward and ask if he was still listening to her rant. He wore a charming smile and suggested that she talk to her bestie to resolve their misunderstandings. He even winked, saying it was getting late and she'd better get going. She blushed and thanked him as she stormed out of the place. Upon checking the time, he realized that the summon must be starting soon. However, several minutes have already passed and the summon still hasn't started. This made him worry. Could something unexpected have happened to Reena and the others? The time was 23:30. Reena and the others were gathered. On the floor lies Dr. Norn. The high priest asked how did he die, to which the believers testified that they saw the people of Tranquil kill the doctor. He glanced at her, silently commending her ability to stay calm despite the situation. The high priest then gave a speech to boost everyone's morale. The followers listened to his speech intently. As he was delivering his words, one of the followers suddenly grabbed his neck as if something was choking him. He was slowly losing his consciousness as he desperately called out to the high priest for help. The devout followers panicked as his lifeless body fell to the floor. The high priest told them not to be afraid as the sacrifice will proceed as they had initially planned. Suddenly, the door slammed open. A believer urgently reported that the outside defense has been breached already. He added that they also haven't found the enemy yet, inciting fear amongst the other believers. The high priest was also alarmed. They could only evacuate now. The financiers of the church demanded that they be taken away first. He threw a glance at them, then ordered the followers to escort them away from immediately. He then grabbed Reena's hand and told her to come with him. She asked where they were going, to which he said they needed to find the messenger. She then glanced at the entrance. She saw that it was raining, prompting her to wonder why it was so quiet. She turned back as she felt that something was coming. Suddenly, intense rumbling was felt as the place collapsed. Reena felt a sharp pain in her chest and clutched it. She then stumbled and tripped over. She didn't even have any clue of what was happening, only to find herself laying down in pitch-black darkness as she desperately called for the Lord. She then woke up to the echo of a voice in her head telling her to find the messenger. She found herself stuck under the rubbles, her bones broken and her body hurting. She tried to move, gritting her teeth as she resolved herself to get out of the place. The rubbles was flipped over, and she managed to break free. She found a severed hand holding her forearm. It was the high priest's hand. He died as well. She laid her eyes upon the ruins surrounding, saying she'll leave this place. She can feel the insignia in her back heating up and decided to follow its lead. She left that horrendous place with the determination to find the messenger. At the shop, Shin was wondering if the anti-magic bureau made a move. He left the door open just now since he thought Reena was there, but it was only a stray cat. Meanwhile, she finally found herself in front of the cafe, soaking wet under the heavy rain. She then collapsed. Above the rooftops were mysterious-footed men watching over. Turns out they were from the Tranquil. As Reena laid unconscious on the ground, a cat approached her. It then looked up. A brewing storm was sure to come shortly. The people from the Tranquil noticed the appearance of the kitten, making him blush in adoration of its cuteness. He then shook his head. There was no time for distraction since this task is urgent. The kitty was alarmed by their presence. Suddenly, a bright flash of divine light flashed from within the coffee shop, overwhelming the man from the Tranquil. A white fog was then seen together with the divine light of the Lord. The Tranquil members were surprised that the shopkeeper exudes the auras of the two exterior world gods. An immense explosion ensued. The kitten reverted back to its burning chaos seed form, making them tremble in fear of its massive and terrifying appearance. Its whole body exudes a heat enough to evaporate raindrops before it hits it. They frantically scattered as they retreated. One of them seemed relieved that its massive body makes it slow, but assuming so was a big mistake, and he was never given the chance to correct such a mistake as he was taken down. The other member saw this. They were terrified by his speed. The monster extended its claws, severely impaling one of the members. One of the members thought he had a chance of escaping as the monster took down two of the members first, but it was another great mistake. The monster was in front of him in no time. He didn't even have the time to process how it happened. He was instantly cut down lengthwise. The last remaining members seemed to be the smartest of them. Knowing that it was too fast, he opted to hide to increase his chances of survival. However, such petty tricks were futile against absolute power. The monster looked down upon him with its trauma-inducing eyes. A desperate scream was heard from afar, signaling the end of a one-sided massacre. Reena remained unconscious as she laid on the ground amidst the heavy rain. The burning chaos seed approached her and laid beside her. She woke feeling the heat from the monster. The monster opened its mouth seemingly about to devour her. This woke the hell out of her. She was frightened as she found herself cornered. The monster looked at her with those menacing eyes. She extended her hands in fear and told the monster to not come closer. The monster opened its mouth once again to devour her, prompting her insignia to be activated. The monster was then engulfed in the raging flames of the Lord of Ashes. From within the flames, screeching was heard. The flames died down as they incinerated the creature. While Reena felt like she could control the blaze, it was the very same eternal golden flames of the Lord that burned everything. The flames that burned creation roared once again. From nothingness emerged the flesh of the monster once again. Like a phoenix being reborn from its ashes, the monster was able to recover itself within the fire. Reena closed her eyes and thought that she must hold out till she can burn the monster to death. She persisted and kept the flames alive, but wasn't able to keep herself awake till the very end. The monster stepped forward unscathed by the raging flames. It began approaching her. It looked at the young girl, thinking that she was a person chosen by the Lord of Ashes. It began transforming back into its cat form. He knows that her injuries were fatal if not treated soon. But like the cat form it took, the chaos seed turned back with sass, thinking it wasn't his business. Meanwhile, Shin hurriedly went out of the shop, only to see the cat coming in from the door. He politely greeted the cat and went out to get a closer look. For him, it sounded like the cry of a giant monster. As he went out, he noticed the unconscious Reena under the heavy rain. He saw it coming. Reena and the others were attacked, and the sacrifice was aborted. He noticed her severe injuries, prompting him to pick her up and save her. As he went inside the shop, he told the kitten to alert him of any monsters outside. The kitten nonchalantly shrugged it off. Meanwhile, Shin was murmuring to himself as he treated Reena at the back of the shop. He seemed out of it, nose bleeding over the side of her unclothed body. He then noticed something. Her wounds were healing by themselves. Time passed by quickly. Reena tried to recall the events of last night when he fainted. She also remembered how she cried on Shin's chest while his nose cried with red tears. Looking at her own body being all healed, she thought that it must be done by the messenger. She then realized that the Lord's messenger lives there disguised as a human being. Shin sat by the customer's seat as he waited for orders. Reena emerged from behind thanking him. He turned back, pale, and had massive eye bags as he invited her for breakfast. She was surprised upon seeing him, asking if he was even alive. He revealed that he never got any sleep last night and said it was no big deal. She seemed surprised that even the Lord's messenger needed sleep. He was really out of it, fatigued as he ate his breakfast. Turns out, he stayed up all night watching out for monsters. Then he went to the library to see the details that Brian left behind. After confirming it, he went to the anti-magic bureau to report Tranquil. He then came back to cook for Reena with the last bit of his energy. He then requested her to tell him the events that happened last night. She immediately agreed, to which he assured that they could talk as they ate. After she narrated the events of last night, he figured out that the monster sounds like the one Brian offered up to him. She then asked if he was okay since he was so pale, to which he reassured he was fine. But deep inside, he was panicking after he learned that it really went missing. She then proceeded to talk about the order, expressing her condemnation of the sacrifice and involuntary remolding of living people. If only she had more time, she could have come to figure more things out. He smiled, acknowledging that she has been through a lot. Despite being an uneducated orphan, she has grown by an unimaginable level and earned his admiration. As he ate, he remembered how different she was from when he was first summoned. His eyes sparkled, wondering if she was an actual witch in blood and flesh. The kitten then approached them, immediately capturing her heart as she asked for its name. He then held his chin, then came up with the name Cola. The kitten seemed happy as it heard the name. He then told her to give it a hug as it is quite friendly anyway. As she began to reach for the cute kitten, it suddenly partially transformed into its chaos seed form, scaring Reena so bad that she grew pale. A scream was heard from the back alarming him. He came to check if the cat scratched or injured her. She was stuttering as she said that the cat scared her while the cat played innocent. Shin rubbed its head wondering if it was not friendly. He rubbed its chin saying he'll turn it into a kitty cake if it ever harmed Reena. She sighed skeptical of whether the cat really won't hurt her. The cat turned to her with its threatening eyes, frightening her and prompting her to cling to his arms. She even pressed her body against his arms, making him blush as he agreed for her to come with him. Meanwhile, outside the shop, George can be heard whining about having to deal with stressful people. Lane told him that he should stop complaining about work every day. He then revealed that they are to ask Shin to assist them through an in-person appearance. They then prepared to go in. Inside the shop, she was having a dilemma about what she should order. Meanwhile, George found it uncomfortable that the cat was glaring at him. The cat hissed angrily. Shin then came to serve their orders as he asked if they were satisfied with the information they got from the library. George revealed that they will make their move tonight. However, he acknowledged that the enemy's power is not something they could easily strike down in one night. He then expressed his disapproval of their plan to attack later at night. He knew that he would get himself killed if he went along with their plan, but he knew he could only persuade them by making things clear. He switched to his godly mode and unleashed his immense aura, telling them to not be greedy. This sudden surge of godly aura overstimulated Ling, and this was immediately noticed by George after seeing her quivering. He immediately grabbed her back, picking her up as he apologized and excused themselves. He told them to calm down as he definitely felt her killing intent. Reena then entered and asked if the guests were gone. He confirmed and advised her to keep hiding away from their sight. He couldn't shake off the thought that a lot of people may die tonight. But for some reason, the feeling of pulling the strings behind gives him strange satisfaction. Amidst the bad weather, there was an even worse storm brewing within the city. The rain continued to pour. A member of the Tranquil who seemed to not have a tranquil kept on yapping, while George did not indulge with his talking and immediately unleashed an attack. Their operation was meant to be a surprise attack, but the enemy were prepared for it. Not to mention, there were other instances where their plans went awry. All these instances suggest that there was a traitor within the bureau. He then told everyone on the earphone that they must deal with the sacrifice within 2 hours. He looked up, wondering what Villard was up to. He never thought he'd meet an old friend under these circumstances. The rain was not stopping. A monster can be seen looking out for enemies. It then spotted a woman traversing through the walls of the building. She swung her sword, and the next thing the monster knew was that it had been cut down already. It was Ling swerving around as she made a perfect landing. But being an insect monster, it has a tenacious vitality that allows it to survive and counterattack. She once again swung her sword, stopping in the midst of her motion and chanted the word downward. A strong gravitational field was conjured, trapping the monster and making it collapse to the ground under its own weight. She wore a menacing look on her face, continuing to crush the monster using gravity. It was revealed to be a Gaia's blade, which requires skeletal sacrifices. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her rib cage, prompting her to clutch it. She looked forward, determined to keep going. Suddenly, a loud explosion was heard as a projectile hit her in the chest. The bullet was from a member of the Tranquil. He was confident as he was injected with the ancient deep-sea blood, which boosted his body. He now has immunity to damage from all conventional thermal weapons. The two of them charged against each other, their blades clashing in a single instant. She then shifted her steps, then leaped forward to cut him down. She successfully managed to sever his left arm. She threw dagger stares at him, then unleashed a few more slashes. Suddenly, his body began morphing. It was a disgusting transfiguration. He became a slimy monster. An opening formed on the surface of its flesh. It slowly approached her, prompting him to swoop down her sword. She chanted the commanding word, activating an intense gravitational field that pulled the monster down. She then took the ability to its higher level after seeing that it wasn't enough. The gravity intensified as the monster struggled more. A huge explosion was heard, followed by the monster being crushed flat to the ground. She won, but she felt another sharp pain in her ribs once again. She injected herself a quick recovery serum. Now that she has dealt with the trouble, they can now proceed. George seemed unhappy that he disappeared at the start of the battle even though they were partners, but she dismissed it as there was no time to waste in finding the priest fast is their top priority. The veteran sarcastically complied as he called her captain. He couldn't help but whine that the Nolan City's only S-rank investigator wasn't present. Meanwhile, somewhere in the corners of B-land, a white-haired high priest declared the city as a special land to reach out to the god. Several more believers were seen gathered at the place together with the high priest. He stepped on a summoning circle, conjuring a ladder-like foothold that helped him ascend as he tried summoning his god. He continued the ritual crossing through the ceiling. Outside, he was seen hovering as he continued chanting. A massive magic circle in the sky was conjured, literally a brewing storm. Investigators from the Anti-Magic Bureau collapsed. George said that the sacrifice has begun. He looked up with an alarmed face, wondering if everything in there was the god's kin. As the priest descended and almost touched the sky, a portal that connects to the exterior world began opening. At the coffee shop, Shin was taking his sweet time sleeping. Meanwhile, the cat sensed that someone was summoning an exterior world god. Suddenly, he instantly vanished, making the cat leap in surprise. Reena then came searching for the messenger, but she only heard a voice telling her to not come over. Back at the area where the summoning ritual was being conducted, the priest wore a cold look on his face as he stared at the portal. Meanwhile, George finally met the conditions for using his third blade. He summoned his magical blade then threw it forward. It all happened in an instant. The blade is now in front of his chest. It was so fast that he couldn't even react. The blade managed to successfully pierce his chest. The priest coughed up blood as he did not expect this surprise attack. The veteran looked at him, thinking that he's now out of range. Lin gripped her sword to attack when suddenly, George felt that all sound had vanished. The silent singer, Tranquil, has been summoned. It was Shin in a modern gentleman's suit and a skull mask. He began accelerating downward, wondering why he was still falling. He started panicking and tried to calm himself by thinking of using his mist ability before landing. Fortunately, he finally landed on a foothold made of magic. It was ironic that he was summoned as an external god, but still thanks God for surviving. The priest then chanted telepathic messages as he offered the ever-fading cross. Seeing that they opted using telepathic communication, he thought it was rather befitting of the Tranquil's theme. Recalling what was written in the book, Shin knew that the Tranquil cultist pursue the eradication of emotions. He gazed at the high priest, wondering what even was the meaning of living such a life. He then declared that he accepted his sacrifice. The ever-fading cross hovered in front of him as he accepted it. But as for the cultist's request, he rejected it. The priest couldn't make sense of what he had just heard. Shin thought that not a person could dare defy him now with his aura. He grinned. He finally had the capability to reject the requests of the cultists. He resolved himself to absolutely not concede a thing to them. This rejection left the high priest speechless as he said that he will never grant them the tranquil mind. His veins were popping. He raged to the point that it distorted his face. His resentments echoed through Shin's head. He was so heartbroken that he aged significantly. His foothold began disintegrating into thin air, causing him to fall. However, he couldn't be bothered by it. He then stopped a drop of rain, leaving it in total stoneness. From down the buildings in the city, desperate pleas and resentments were heard. They were asking why the god had forsaken them. He wondered if all the cultists were gathered in that room. The raindrop remained still, unmoving. It was just like that, and the almighty god was gone. George was left behind with his team, thinking that the Tranquil has fallen short in their wishful thinking. He knew that their ways were wrong, desiring the eternal tranquil mind and trying to please the external god to gain it. He couldn't help but feel pity towards those cultists. He exclaimed as soon as he could hear the sounds again, signifying that the god had already left. When given orders to start making arrests, Ling immediately ran. He then turned to other members of his team and ordered them to start apprehending. He knew that the priest was just somewhere around the vicinity, severely injured if not dead. In no time, George was able to track the priest. It was revealed that this man was his old friend as he bade his farewell to him. He poked the tip of his umbrella against his chest, asking him what was the deal. He seemed sad as he called him by his name again, Villard. Meanwhile, Shin finally returned to the coffee shop. Shin immediately petted the cat, who was wondering how he appeared just now. He spoke and said that he was so busy that kept neglecting it. But upon hearing him say that he will soon take good care of it, the cat panicked. He hugged the kitten, thinking that he should buy him good cat food if it kept acting spoiled. Reena came from the corner of the room and called his attention. She told him that she had to go already. It was then revealed that the high priest survived the attack and said that the order desperately needs her. He smiled, jokingly saying that it wouldn't hurt if she wanted to stay for a few more days. However, her eyes sparkled upon hearing it. He panicked and immediately changed the topic, asking about the Chaos Ashes order. She revealed that she plans to issue changes through joint efforts. He smiled, remarking that she seemed to have things under her control and told her to go back now. After thanking him, she silently vowed to spread his name and wisdom far and wide. He then decided to go to bed as he was so tired. Suddenly, the ever-fading cross hit the floor. It was then thrown again. Shin was frustrated about his new relic. Even the cat who watches him can't understand what was going on. Turns out, he couldn't figure out how to use it. He decided to set it aside and test his new power first. A realization suddenly hit him. He slammed his fist against the table and wondered if it was the same ability which immobilized the rain. He saw that the coffee was spilled, prompting him to raise his left hand to activate his new ability. He pointed at the coffee and chanted to mobilize. Suddenly, the coffee was fixed, frozen in place. He was mesmerized upon seeing that it was indeed his new power, but it was revealed that it only lasted for a short while as it fell to the floor. The cat suddenly approached him, then leaped as it tried to attack him. He looked at the cat, wondering what's the deal with it. He then chanted to mobilize, successfully freezing the cat in place while he scooted over to evade. The cat then slammed itself into the wall, earning it a hurting nose. It attacked him once again, to which he cheekily activated his immobilize ability. The cat once again slammed against the wall. It seems to have not learned its lesson, repeatedly slamming against the wall face first. Shin was having fun abusing his new power as well as his cat. As the cat remained frozen in air, he rotated it downward to not ruin the wall's paint. He then let go of it, crashing to the floor. The poor cat was full of bumps, teary-eyed. He then picked the cat up and said that was enough. He glanced at the bookshelf and thought that he still needed to study his new power. He cast his immobilized skill upon the books to practice. Upon testing out his skill, he learned several rules about this ability. He also earned several bumps from failing. Suddenly, a woman entered the shop calling out and looking for him. Shin immediately immobilized her, then hastily fixed his appearance. The woman asked if there was anything wrong, to which he dismissed and volunteered to get her a cup of coffee. 1 hour later, the woman stormed out of the shop, teary-eyed. He then figured out that she perceived an image during the immobilization period. The kitten then climbed up the table. A smirk formed in his lips as he watched the kitten. It looked at him, clueless and with puffy cheeks. Meanwhile, a man then entered the shop and called him. It was George and Ling, asking him if they could celebrate their victory there. He smiled and said that they may do so, but his mood shifted as he added that they can't entirely. Turns out, Ling had some snacks from outside smuggled inside the cafe. Shin told them to speak up and asked what happened this time around. George then revealed that he wanted to talk about Villard. George was whining that they were sitting far away from him. Shin seemed sulking as he asked for their drinks. The veteran investigator said he'll go with latte, while Ling said she wanted to try the brief coffee. When asked about snacks, she said that she was not that hungry. He wasn't speaking, but he was pissed. She continued playing with fire, blatantly checking her smuggled snacks. He then went off to prepare their orders. He reminded her that she shouldn't have brought food in, to which she only sighed. He added that facing Shin was actually more tiring than hunting cultists. Amidst their chit-chat, George told her that she only lacked the experience to become an A-rank investigator. It was the reason he sent her out first. He was helping her gain the required experience. He then asked them how she felt arresting the cultist personally, to which she replied that she thought back of her father. He then assured her that her father's crimes had nothing to do with her. But seeing that she doesn't want to discuss such things, he chose to remain silent. The coffee was finally served. He then sat in front of them and asked about Villard. The veteran revealed that he was a dangerous man who was once a part of their trio. Their team aimed to capture the mystical relics lost throughout the world. Villard was their leader. He added that they achieved a lot and became famous in a mere few years, but they parted ways and went down their own separate paths eventually. But he knew that Villard was a crazy man. He was unstable to the core. Shin asked if he was that strong, to which George revealed that he was actually like a teacher to him. Link continued munching on her food, asking if he was really strong. He turned to her and said that she must run if she encountered him alone. It was then revealed that he had the ability to change his appearance and that the priest of the Tranquil they caught was not Villard himself. Looking back, he knew that Brian wouldn't provide false information for the sake of his daughter. Shin told them that errors seemed to have occurred and that the Tranquil could have 2 priests and be land. George bowed together with Ling as they thanked him. He said that there was no need to be polite since they were friends anyway. Outside the shop, the veteran advised her to be careful in these times as they walked. He revealed that he already had people looking for the traitor within the bureau. Link said that he doesn't need to show concern for her. She then asked if he wanted to say something, to which he grew speechless. He then revealed that he was actually aware of her father's situation. She didn't seem happy that he insisted on bringing up the topic. He proceeded to narrate how her father, who was once a hero, turned into a villain. He said that her trying to make amends with the victims of her father was enough. He told her that she was a victim as well and that there was no point in persisting to atone and repent. All these words from him made her irritated. She emphasized that they were partners and not friends. They were not even related nor close enough to talk about those things. She walked away, leaving the old man feeling apologetic. He held his forehead and thought that maybe it was for the best. Back in his room, George thought that he shouldn't have said much to her. He thought that the bureau deliberately set him up with a girl he could sympathize with as a partner. He remembered how his second blade works, making the user thoroughly forget a close one in exchange for an instant death attack. He knew that he had already forgotten many details, but still retained some knowledge of his blurry past. However, Shin seemed to be not impacted by the negative effects of his relic. He smiled bitterly. Maybe he finally found a friend who will never disappear. Suddenly, the voice from the other line reported the finish investigation. He got up, realizing that Villard was within their ranks all along. But before he could finish, his words were put to a halt. Turns out the devil himself was standing right before him. Shin and the cat seemed flabbergasted. A zombie-like creature has infiltrated the coffee shop. It turned to them with its hideous face. Seeing this, Cole gasped as it thought that the creature was so vile-looking. Thorny tentacles began emerging from its body. They then extended forward, aiming to attack Shin. The lad was surprised by the sudden attack, but he was quick enough to activate his mist ability. The monster's attack was all in vain. He then solidified in the air, extended his index finger, and then activated his immobilizing ability. The zombie's movements were put to a halt, rendering him frozen in a 5-second duration. As the effect began to wear off, Shin activated his mist ability once again. However, there was no hostility detected from the zombie. It then sat in the corner crying. Suddenly, the zombie seemed to have been shut down like it was a machine, leaving Shin wondering if they were also attacking George and Lane. Back in the veteran's place, the old man was catching up with an old friend. It was Villard who appeared before him now as an enemy. The veteran asked why he came to him. He told him how similar their personalities were and thus the reason he came to end his life. He whipped out his distortion-grade relic that has the ability to attract weapons with an aerial trajectory. That being said, the veteran's blade relics were rendered useless. However, what concerns George the most is that Villard said they were similar. He suddenly went into attack. Summoning his blade relic, he immediately unleashed a slash against him. He knew that Villard must have arranged manpower outside. Thus, he couldn't loiter around the place for long. He leaped out of the building only to get greeted by cultists immediately casting a magic spell against him. However, expected this. He raised up his umbrella, opening it as he used it to block the incoming barrage of attacks. He peeked from behind his umbrella with those cold eyes of his, then landed on the ground as he prepared his blade. He then swooped in, dashing towards the enemy horde and slashing them down. They planned to hold him down with magic, but he already knew what they were going to do. He immediately took down the one who was about to activate the restraining magic. He flipped his blade and changed his grip, unleashing a barrage of merciless mutilation against the enemies. He knew that he needed to hurry and get out, but then a voice was heard stopping him. It was Villard, openly expressing his intent to kill him. The two of them locked in an intense stare down. He then goofily spoke about how Brian betrayed him to protect his daughter. Meanwhile, the old man wondered if he was doing this to let the Anti-Magic Bureau hear this. He then revealed that he was planning to deal with him after the sacrifice, but he betrayed him first. George then goofily poked on how Brian has got a daughter complex like no one else. Villard then taunted him as he smiled, then leaped forward to attack. The veteran managed to evade him. He then spoke to his earpiece, leaving a message to Langer that she may not take revenge against Villard. He also wanted for her to leave the Anti-Magic Bureau and be a normal person. With an evil grin on his face, he asked if George doesn't want her to go down such a path. The two of them continued clashing blades, then the veteran replied that nothing good comes out of being a rank investigator. His face began exhibiting traces of insanity as he taunted him more. He activated numerous magic circles, prompting George to keep his guard up. Back at the coffee shop, Shin couldn't sleep as a lot of things that happened recently were bothering him. He even remembered that customer who always comes to him crying. He thought to himself, isn't this the life he'd once aspired for? But now he seemingly found another meaning, that his life was linked to a greater world. He seemed happy with his current life, forming new friendships along the way. But that happiness was short-lived as he saw Lane walk inside. She casually revealed that George was dead, surprising Shin, who was utterly unprepared. The two of them sat by one of the shop's vacant tables. He was speechless as thoughts came flooding his mind. The image of that old man flashed in his mind. He considered him to be a true friend. He was boiling with fury, but calmly asked if it was the Tranquil's doing. She gave him a bitter and thrifty yes. She also added that as long as it's nothing strange, she'd be willing to do anything. As he heard her ask for help in avenging him, his face was filled with rage. He clenched his fists as he muttered the word vengeance. He boiled with overwhelming rage, so much so that even the grieving Ling was intimidated. He wore a menacing look on his face and asked for her to share everything she knew about it. The sky seemed to be mourning for George's death as well. At the port, Shin found himself checking if the rain had stopped already. He threw his gaze upon the vast ocean ahead, smiling bitterly as he thought about things in life. An hour ago, Ling was seen sharing all the information she knew, including the port where Villard was planning to escape through. She gritted her teeth, unwilling to let him get away. His eyes grew cold as he said he would never get his chance to escape. He then activated his mist ability, purposefully leaving traces of his aura. Shin was deliberately exuding his godly aura to lure him. Meanwhile, Villard can be seen planning his next course of action, including his escape. It was revealed that he became nearly immortal over 100 years ago, thanks to the Silent Singer's gift. And speaking of the devil, no, the god himself was there. He threw his gaze upon the source of the aura. At the warehouse, Villard found himself chasing after the godly aura. A familiar figure then spoke to him. It was George, alive and kicking. It was as if he had seen a ghost and immediately questioned his identity. Shin immediately dropped the charade, then started another act as the Silent Singer's messenger. He then told him that he won't be getting the eternal tranquil mind. He was utterly enraged, but that rage turned into surprise as Shin suddenly appeared behind him. Surprise turned into dread, while his voice and offer was enticing him. Shin's words were like that of a devil instead of a god, tempting to prey into walking to his trap. He revealed that he must sacrifice his own soul. He then vanished, leaving him pressured as the enemy approached his location. Outside, a bunch of people were seen raiding the place. One of them was Ori, and a rank investigator who immediately felt the presence of the exterior god. His worries came into fruition. The magic circle to summon the Silent Singer has been conjured over the skies. Villard can be seen ascending towards it. Investigators exclaimed as they recognized the man they were after. He smiled, looking down on everyone as he boasted his nearing to achieve the eternal tranquil mind. He continued yapping with the typical villain speech. From above, a godly voice was heard calling to him. His face displayed the insanity he had been keeping to his core, while the investigators wore a worried look on their faces. The Silent Singer has emerged. It was Shin, smiling as everything went according to his plan. Villard knelt in front of him, smiling ignorantly, not knowing of the despair he'll experience sooner. He recited the ritual chants wholeheartedly as he offered his soul, only to be rejected to be bestowed the tranquil mind by the Silent Singer. However, he accepted his sacrificial offer. His soul began seeping out of his flesh, conjuring all his essence into a spirit ball. His flesh lost all vitality as he was left in despair after being deceived. The ritual was finally over. Shin grasped Villard's soul in his hands as he thought about George. The magical footholds vanished, leaving Villard's empty shell falling down. Ori watched the situation unfold. The magic circle has vanished from the sky, while a hole was seen on a building's roof. Below was Villard's lifeless body, an ending befitting for the villain he is. On the same day that George died, Shin told Ling to find a man named Brian and handed her a piece of paper. With sorrowful eyes, he said that he might be capable of resurrecting him. She was surprised upon hearing this. After all, the practice of resurrection is taboo. He then asked if she was afraid or unwilling, to which she contemplated the consequences first before responding. In the end, she let her personal feelings get the better of her. She gritted her teeth, refusing to put up with evil. She agreed to find Brian and get his help in resurrecting George. He smiled upon hearing her response. He said that things may not go well with Brian, but promised that he will definitely take down Villard. The usual dark clouds were not seen, as if the weather was cooperating to give George a peaceful and tranquil funeral. Several prominent figures were seen attending his funeral, including the director of the bureau. Ling wore a sorrowful face. The funeral speech went on with everyone hoping for him to find rest and solace in God's kingdom. Back at the coffee shop, Shin smiled as he asked if she wanted a cup of coffee. After a moment of thinking, she decided to try a new flavor that appeals more to women. As she tried the new flavor, her eyes sparkled. She immediately drank it bottoms up, not minding the heat. As she finished drinking, she licked her lips and commended how delicious it was. She put down the cup, then revealed that they held a meeting. One of the agendas they talked about was the frequent coming of God incidents in B-Land. Next agenda was about Shin himself. The Bureau decided not to make an enemy out of him. She then smiled mischievously as she revealed that she's taking George's place. He figured out that he was after the reimbursements and public funds for eating and drinking. She felt a little embarrassed as he got it accurately. She awkwardly tried making excuses, then deliberately changed the topic into B-Land being hot for comings of gods. He crossed his hands over his chest and said he understood, then asked what about George. Her face went serious. She barely opened her mouth as she spoke. She then pouted, saying he needs time for himself. He smiled upon hearing that she was doing well. Somewhere out, Brian and George were seen catching up with one another. He then told the veteran that he was saddened upon his passing. He said that the choice is now up to him, either to pledge allegiance to the Almighty or report to the Bureau. He seemed speechless for a moment, then asked him why he had to put on such a big show to his face. The two of them continued messing around as they spent their time together. The usual dark skies were now clear. Back at the shop, Ling was whining about George having fun. She then told him that he only puts on a serious act in front of him. He then excused himself as he still had work to do. The skies began darkening once again. Ling was wondering about the strange feeling she got from him. It was as if he was omniscient. Everyone was moving according to how he saw fit. Like everyone was just his pawns. Suddenly, she felt the heat emanating from her belly. She clutched it, wincing in pain. She decided to head to an empty area. Behind the dark alleys, Ling was surprised by what she saw. An insignia appeared in his belly. It was a lovely day for the shop. Tables inside the cafe were almost all occupied. Shin smiled as he began serving his customers. A regular customer who always vented out on him came back happily. He immediately gave her a seat. It has been 2 months already since the tranquil situation. The business situation has been good lately, and he was thinking of hiring an assistant. He played with Villard's soul in his hands as if it was a stress ball while he planned the matters of his business. Suddenly, his eyes glowed blue. An image of Villard was seen explaining the effects of the cross. It was revealed that the wielder has to sacrifice their sanity as the cost of using the relic. All those memories were then recalled into Villard's soul. He smiled upon seeing how useful Villard's memories were for someone like him who's short of mystical knowledge. He couldn't help but commend the villain he once fought. Looking back, he never paid any cost in using the relics as he was granted the power of the exterior gods. He also learned that his memories have a lot of practicing tactics for intangible arts. He also tried several magic rituals inside the shop, but they were all in vain. He gave up on them, thinking that he might not have the gift. Suddenly, he was alarmed to hear the summoning incantations. He immediately got out of his seat, pulled the mask from his drawer, then smiled as he prepared for another summon. A gust of energy surrounded him, growing and engulfing him like he was inside a tornado. He reached his pocket for something. It was a knife, his only means for self-defense. In no time, he was transported to a dull, colorless place. He found himself in front of Grayscale Building. As he looked at it, he recognized that it was the Belland Imperial College. He extended his hands forward, distorting the walls. The place then transitioned into a different scene. He wondered if he was in the achromatic city. He also felt that someone in the library was waiting for him. He decided to head off first to have a look as he was engulfed in black gusts of energy, transforming him into his silent singer appearance. He wandered along the streets of the monochromatic world. In the library, he found himself looking for the presence of his summoner. A lady then spoke, remarking his arrival. It was an alluring woman in a purple dress. She had silvery white hair and scarlet eyes, looking like the grown-up version of Reena. She walked forward, then bowed her head as she introduced herself to the silent singer. She winked, saying it was a pleasure to meet him. He blushed upon the sight of her gesture. She then explained her circumstances to him, then requested he bestow upon her his blade. With an alluring look, he promised to give her a reward in exchange. He asked what reward she was talking about. She smiled in response, then revealed the reward to be a blade of her own. He was surprised upon hearing this. Both of them were after the same thing. He thought that it was his first time meeting someone brave enough to casually interact with him, making him wonder if she was actually a succubus. She then spoke to break the silence, offering him a little piece of information about the future. After hearing what she has to offer, Shin's interest was definitely piqued. She smiled as she reiterated that she was a witch. But before anything else, she whipped out her ever-changing weapon and offered it. He expressed his willingness to accept the sacrifice. She then handed it to him. He received the offering. It was a silvery glass ore. She then asked for her end of the bargain. He replied that he shall send it promptly, then whipped out the knife he brought earlier for self-defense. He handed it to her, earning her gratitude. He told her that it wasn't a big deal, confirming in his mind that she was a succubus for sure. He revealed that the light chase will soon reach B-Land in search of the false god. He began wondering if this false god she was talking about was him. She looked at him, declaring to reveal the future as a bonus leverage. She predicted that the false god would ultimately lose. It would all start with his triumph, but will fall from heaven during his proudest moment. And after that, he will cease to exist forever. She turned to him, asking if he got the gist of his words. He remained speechless for a moment, then remarked about her way of revealing things through profound riddles. Gusts of energy surrounded his feet. He looked up and said big changes seemed to be on their way, then he was finally transported. A millennium ago, there was a powerful kingdom that plundered without end. Until one day, they liberated a witch from the seal of a certain order. She was then exhibited at the plaza of the king's capital as a trophy. But she spoke about the future, predicting the downfall of the nation. The people were enraged and wanted to kill her, prompting her to hide. After decades of prosperity and power, the greedy kingdom desired even the afterlife. They decided to summon exterior gods who welcomed the dead, leading to their inevitable downfall. The first witch was said to have passed her blood lineal factors to all the seers and witches of today. The image of Villard's private workshop then flashed in his mind. Shin can definitely make money out of it. As he stopped using Villard's soul, he thought that Reena might be the first witch's descendant too. He then noticed something. Villard's soul seemed to be fidgeting. He cleared his throat and decided to check what was happening. He held the soul near his chest. It exploded with bright lights. A while later, he was standing in front of the disaster-grade relic he got from the first witch. It was a powerful relic, but its costs were definitely heavy as well. He held the relic in his hand, then closed his eyes as he thought of an offensive-type relic. As he opened his eyes, he gripped the orb tight and yelled transform. The relic was successfully activated. Black smokes began emanating from his body, transforming him into an aristocratic-style character. He then spun his cane, remarking that it was a bit heavy. He was delighted that he didn't have to pay the cost of using the relic. He then reverted back to his original form. Now he needed an offensive ability to pair with his offensive relic. Half an hour later, he couldn't figure out what was the new ability given to him by the achromatic city. Frustrated, he stood up and decided to make himself a copy first. But as he grabbed the doorknob, it suddenly broke. He was surprised that the knob suddenly broke with just one pull. Seeing that he doesn't have any means to open the door, he decided to kick it. It was just a soft kick, but he managed to generate a powerful force. He also wondered why the cane was a bit heavy. It took him a moment to process what had just happened. When everything finally sinked in, he wondered how much replacing the door would cost. He sat on the table contemplating his new ability to enhance both strength and defense. Holding a knife in his hand, he was planning to test it out. Without a second thought, he immediately cut off his hands. It was exactly timed with the entrance of a customer who asked if he was intending to harm himself. Seemed like insanity had finally settled within the corners of Shin's psyche as he let out an evil smile. He was even tasting his own blood while cackling. The woman couldn't make sense of what was happening. But in reality, Shin was just whining about his cut. He then noticed the appearance of the customer and offered her a seat. She panicked, stuttering as she replied. A brief moment passed by. In the woman's eye, Shin was menacing as he asked for her order. She was intimidated as she replied, "She'll have a cold brew coffee." He asked if she wouldn't rather have something warm. After all, her body and clothes were all soaking wet because of the rain. Now that he thinks of it, she looks like someone from the inner world instead of a commoner. He remembered Ling being a little similar to the current guest, having a cold drink in a cold weather. He tried his best to be hospitable to his customer and went off to get a towel for her. She looked at her wet body as she thanked him. However, it turns out that she had smeared the floor. She panicked as she remembered the stories about how the boss of the cafe punishes those who have wronged him. Meanwhile, Shin was trying his best to not break the coffee cup. After quite some time, he finally served the guest her coffee. She stuttered as she expressed her gratitude. She was trembling upon remembering the tales of the shopkeeper who acts like a chess master and manipulates everyone. It was said that he ruthlessly dominates those who demand his favor. She was trembling in fear, and Shin saw this. He wondered why she asked for a cold brew in the first place. The customer looked at her with fear. What a terrifying existence this man is. He then asked her reason for coming. She began introducing herself as Miss Chris, the owner of the Coronarius agency. They were better known as taskmasters. He remembered that they were like mercenaries of sorts. A certain taskmaster agency wanting to make Ling's acquaintance once foolishly messed up things for her. The customer went on with discussing the mysterious association called Absent Eyes. They were usually harmless, but they recently have gone mad and went on a killing spree. She added that their powers were mysterious, tremendous, and suppressive. She then expressed her desire to take revenge, hoping for his assistance. She closed her eyes and declared that she was willing to offer herself to him. It was a weird situation. She suddenly began flaunting her body out of nowhere. However, she seemed unappealing to him as he asked what she was doing. She was surprised that he had no interest in her body. Though deep inside, Shin was actually a little bit enticed. She sat down humiliated while he expressed his desire to not meddle too much. Reaching the conclusion of the discussion, she excused herself. Before she could leave, he told her that she could borrow the umbrella by the entrance. Outside, Chris thought she still had a chance as he was clearly hinting towards it. She gripped the umbrella, the very proof that he wanted to establish a bond with her. Seeing as how he wasn't interested in her body, her only choice is to bring a certain item to win his favor. She then looked down, wondering if the shopkeeper likes girly characters like the one designed on Umbrella. Meanwhile, Shin was in a dilemma. The coffee shop is about to go bankrupt any day now. He glanced at his ring, looks like he'll have to rely on it. It was a relic that brought good luck during the day and misfortune at night. He thought that he should try tomorrow instead, or else he'll no longer have money to fix the bedroom door. The next day, the cafe shop had a few customers. Shin seemed disappointed that the ring of good luck did not work. One of the regular customers doesn't seem to be in a good mood. The other customer approached him and commended the coffee he makes. It was Jonas appreciating the acidity of the coffee beans he used. Shin was happy to hear these compliments, while the customer whipped out a red envelope. He accepted the financial aid offered by him. The old man smiled, saying he didn't really want to see the shop close down. Shin was stunned upon learning that Jonas was actually attending a well-known event. They then bid each other goodbye. It was nighttime. Shin was thanking the financial aid he received from Sir Jonas. He closed his eyes, finally dripping into sleep. But shortly after, he woke up, only to find himself in the domain of the Lord of Ashes while searching for Reena. Inside the domain, he heard the voice calling to him. A smile formed in his lips as he saw Reena praying and calling to summon him. He wore a mischievous grin on his face, then squeezed her cheeks as she continued with the ritual. He then noticed after a careful look that she had grown up a little, resembling more of the first witch. Reena spoke, saying she had sensed his attention. He wondered why both her eyes were spiritless, as if she was in a trance. He waved his hands in front of her to check for pupil response, but nothing happened. She then smiled and said she sensed her approach, leading him to conclude that there was a delay in her perception. He cleared his throat, then asked what her business was that she had to call him. She was speechless for a moment. Her every word took a lot of time to be spoken. She then asked for information about the Absent Eye Association, who seemed to be planning to summon an outer god. He heaved a sigh of relief. It wasn't a big deal. She revealed that they fell into madness and went on a killing spree within the inner world. Upon hearing this, he was silently thinking about the essential causes. He smiled. It was thanks to the soul orb that he was able to stay informed. Reena's voice yelled while her face remained calm, surprising Shin. He patted her head and thought that the mental transmission was lagging again. She asked him what course of action should their order take. He took his time analyzing the situation. He closed his eyes, thinking about an exterior god who likes prying into the past. He remained speechless for a few seconds more, then gave her vague and profound advice. Pillars of the domain began disintegrating. She complied and took on his command. He closed his eyes. They were better off meeting in this dream where it was absolutely safe. Suddenly, another voice was heard calling out to him. It was a different title this time. Surroundings were filled with fog. He looked up, only to find himself inside the white heavenly fog's domain. The voice called again and again to summon him as he traversed through the fog. He finally saw the one who called him. It was Brian. Shin was looking forward to witnessing his more upbeat temperament now that his daughter was resurrected. Turns out, he just wanted to ask if he could join the Dull Dust. He seemed clueless about it. He had never even been told of the influence of the so-called Dull Dust. He heaved out a sigh, then gave his permission to him. Shin is now awake. He reached for his phone under his pillow, then checked the time. As he couldn't sleep anyway, he decided to sort out the information he obtained first. He held the soul orb and concentrated hard, earning him information about the Dull Dust. He opened his eyes, then rubbed the orb against his cheeks in utter delight. Outside the shop, Lane can be seen engaging in a stare-down with Cola. The kitten gave her a menacing look, earning it a knock on the head from Shin. She laughed as if teasing the cat. He then asked what's up, to which she began narrating the death of an old man and the remnants of intangible arts. She seemed to be mourning for him. Shin asked if she wanted to know who killed him, to which she confirmed and said she can only come to him. Hearing the keyword absent eyes, he decided to string her along. He then called in said lunatics and asked what they thought of them. Hearing his response, she was now certain that Shin orchestrates everything behind the scenes. She couldn't even do anything about his insignia. She then narrated their history up to the point that the members went insane. He agreed, but it was all in exchange for her investigating the Light Chaser and False God. Seems like it was her first time hearing about them too. It was nighttime already. Somewhere at a remote building, Chris seemed to be in some serious trouble. At the coffee shop, Shin couldn't help but wonder about the new characters coming into play. As Lane told him before, it was indeed as if something was pulling the strings behind. He began exuding his black smoke, transforming into his silent singer form. He smiled, feeling all gorgeous about himself. He took off his ring since nothing good had happened that day. He wondered why can't summoner sacrifice riches directly such as money and jewelry. He added that he would even take checks. Under the night skies, Chris found herself in a rather troublesome situation. She held the one last shot of a life support serum. Her vision was growing blurry as she trembled. Suddenly, a figure approached her sneakily from behind. She turned back surprised. It was a monster roaring loudly in attempts to intimidate her. This monster was revealed to be strong enough to destroy their office. She was so close, if only she could ask the cafe shopkeeper. The monster charged forward to attack her when suddenly, a speeding cane was seen whizzing through the air. It was the silent singer delivering a destructive attack to the monster's body. It was so powerful that he was sent flying and slammed against the wall. Shin was enjoying his act, thinking he was a badass. Meanwhile, Chris looked at him and thought that he must be at least a disaster grade. Terrified, she felt the overwhelming aura of an exterior god coming from him. She looked up with those dreadful eyes wondering if he was actually a divine messenger. Meanwhile, Shin was wondering if he was able to properly show off his powers. But as expected, no one can remain calm after facing the divine aura released by his ability. He remembered the succubus and thought he must save it for her. He then greeted her, who was slumped to the ground. She then reached out for the Dream Spectator potion formula from her pocket. She offered it to him as a token of respect, hoping that he will help her out. She also assured him that she will take him into the hideout of the Absent Eyes Association. He then remarked that the monster was no different to him than an ordinary person. Chris injected the serum to herself. Afterwards, they were ready to go and overturn the enemy's lair. The two of them walked around the place. She was thinking about how things were quickly turned around by the tragedy. She wore that sorrowful look on her face. Coronarius has only 3 members left. He noticed her unusual silence and asked if something was wrong, to which he said it was nothing. She closed her eyes and heaved a sigh of relief. She needed to make a change and will therefore cling tightly to him. She even wondered if it would be too much to pledge loyalty to him as her master. They continued walking around the place until they finally arrived at their destination. Before them was the vast ocean, and the enemy's lair was revealed to be underwater. She said that this was the main base for research and discussions. She also revealed that this is where the madness of the Absent Eye Association members began. He felt like a relic or exterior god was involved in it. She commended him, calling him wise. However, he seemed to not like it as it sounds weird. She pouted silently, cursing her attempt at flattery. He told her to back up a little, then conjured flames on his right hand. He said that he got a test at first since the lair was underwater. He began exuding his godly aura, terrifying Chris. With the enormous amount of aura he's releasing, the test he was planning to do seemed to be an overkill. The flaming embers cast by Shin went underwater, unextinguished, and continued to burn as it made its way deep to the ocean floor. He looked down, thinking that there must be some kind of switch underwater. It was embedded in the seafloor. He found it in no time. Chris grew even more scared of his powers, to which he apologized. It was an awkward situation as he's never seen this much of a reaction before. She then brushed it off and said it was nothing before they moved forward. He opened the switch, to which she went on again with her awkward attempt of flattery. As they entered the lair, she excused herself and fetched something from within her clothes. He blushed at the sight of her, who was reaching underneath her shirt for something. She then exclaimed as she finally found it. She took it out and began to pray, calling for the almighty primordial flame. He knew that the primordial flame was the only orthodox god in the second continent. She then commanded, "Let there be light," as she gave her praises to the sun. She struck a confident pose as he praised her. As they walked, a pair of eyes were watching them from the dark with malicious intent. It was a monster lunging forward to attack them. He whipped out his cane, then casually hit the monster. Seeing the monster bleed in one attack, she couldn't help but admire his strength. A neon green glow then surrounded Chris, prompting him to ask what she was doing. The walls and the floor were all shiny. She cleaned them all. Seeing this, he realized that she was doing all this to earn his favor. As they went deeper into the enemy's lair, they encountered several weak monsters. But to Chris, these monsters weren't weak at all. After a few more minutes of walking, they stopped. She looked at him with inquisitive eyes and wondered if he already knew the secrets about Absent Eyes. He was smiling, thinking that he should be relaxed when using his power. They then exited the tunnel, leading them to a place where everything seemed isolated. There wasn't a glass to stop the water from coming in, but the seawater wasn't leaking inside. She was mesmerized at the sight of this kind of application of the intangible technique. He then asked her if she had good knowledge of the inner world, to which she agreed. For them to be able to build this vast stronghold within their territory, it must have meant that the Absent Eyes may have had several members belonging to the inner world. He confirmed it and commended her observation skills. He smiled, enjoying his chance to show off. He then urged that they keep going. As they walked, she called to him. In front of them waiting were numerous pairs of malicious eyes. She immediately backed off at his command. The monster screeched, frightening Chris as she asked why they were staring at her. Turns out they were attracted to the light she was holding. He realized this and told her to hand over the light to him. The light went beside him as two of the monsters approached. They then charged forward as they screeched, prompting him to activate a barrier. The monster slammed into his barrier, unable to break it. He smiled. The ever-fading cross is indeed a useful relic. He then summoned his weapon-changing relic, transforming it into a whip. He flailed it around, mercilessly slashing through the enemies, cutting them down. The deadly whip whizzed, bringing with it as it slashed through the air, instantly decapitating a number of enemies. Their carcasses were scattered on the ground, giving him an unsightly feeling. Behind him was Chris, vomiting at the disgusting sight of the enemies' corpses. He told her to tidy up after puking it all out. She began cleaning up the mess, thinking that she must perform well. Behind her was Shin, jealous of her that she can use intangible arts. She badly wanted to convince her to work as a cafe staff, though he was worried she might go crazy from his divine aura. Suddenly, she called out to him as she waved a book. She handed it to him and said those seemed to be very important notes. Her eyes sparkled upon hearing his praise. She then volunteered to hold it for him to read. As he read it, he discovered Mr. White being an important figure within the absent eyes. He learned that he presented them with mystical knowledge and unleashed miracles. Turns out, he was the one behind the establishment of this stronghold. It was revealed to be a diary documenting the things that happened upon establishing the place. Chris read it and learned that the writer has felt changes in his body. It was also revealed that Mr. White has an extra lackey by his side, a blind 10-year-old boy with psychic powers. Hearing all this info, he wondered if that person was the mastermind behind the insanity of the Absent Eyes members. They finally reached the end of the notes. She smiled as he praised her, earning him her immense gratitude. Her brows then furrowed as she said that they have really gone mad. He then told her to have another look around to see if there was anything useful. She immediately hurried to check for something useful, but shortly after, she came back disappointed. It was asked if someone had already cleared this place of important things. He then asked if she could give him more assistance. She was thrilled upon hearing this. He couldn't help but think she was so innocent. Meanwhile, she was debating whether to kneel and pledge loyalty or not. Her eyes were spinning as she was overthinking things. Shortly after, she was able to regain her composure. He then asked her to investigate the death of an old man in a nearby slum. She immediately saluted, complying to his request. She wore a determined look on her face, thinking that she must perform even better. Suddenly, sounds of rumbling were heard from a tomb behind. The water has entered. It was a trap left by Mr. White. He looked at her who was panicking, prompting him to take out his ever-fading cross. He threw it for her to catch, only for it to land in between her lady lumps. The water immediately filled the room. Shin maintained his composure, confidently standing in front of the raging water that leaked inside. Chris' eyes were spinning while the relic in her chest activated. At the shore, she can be seen laying down while a cluster of fog hovered beside her. It was Shin reverting back to his human form. He looked at the unconscious woman, thinking that he must immediately remove the relic to avoid heavy cost. As he leaned closer to pick it up, she suddenly woke up. She blushed and let him do his thing. He picked up the relic, then cleared his throat as he told her that she was awake at last. She then teased him. Isn't it too early to wake her? She then expressed her gratitude to him for saving her. They then bid each other farewell as they were about to part ways. As she left, he wished for luck to be on her side. Suddenly, he felt an intense rumbling that shook over the ground. He wondered who was summoning him this time before everything was covered in fog. Turns out it was Brian who summoned him. He also saw Yana, his assistant who faints every time. She seemed loyal to him, but she was only doing his bidding for the money. With money, there was nothing hard to do for her at all. Brian knelt and paid his respects to the white heavenly fog. He then offered the spiritual water as a sacrifice. The vial of spiritual water drifted away from his hands as the heavenly fog accepted it. He stared intently at the offering. As he looked closer, he noticed that he changed his hairstyle. He remembered that both Reena and Brian had a different perspective in the dream world, making him realize that he has been stupidly transforming himself every time he was summoned. This time, he was wondering what to recite to him. He then began reciting the uniformity of all things, an excerpt from Zhuangzi. It was revealed that fully mastering this taboo knowledge would allow one to deconstruct and reconstruct a myriad of things. He expressed his loyalty and gratitude, then reported that he was planning to take the trial of slaying the Light Chaser. Shin was surprised upon hearing this, prompting him to command Brian to head to the rendezvous point. There, he is to seek out his messenger. He commanded him to head to the rendezvous point and seek out the fog's messenger. Brian smiled as he complied. He looked at his passed-out assistant, telling her that she will get her money. However, there were terribly important things for him to do. Shin activated his mist ability. He looked around as he reverted back to his human form. He looked at the offering as he thought of prioritizing getting clues about the light chaser, but he was presented with a dilemma. How could he get to the college went so far, and there were no means of transportation? He thought of flying over using his atomization, but the aftermath is too overbearing. He saw a bike parked in the entryway, then apologized to whoever its owner was. He summoned his morphing relic, then made a key out of it. Meanwhile, Brian had just finished the summoning ritual. He extended his hands in the air as an explosion of bright lights was seen. A magical door was conjured, leading him to his lovely daughter who missed him dearly. He was delighted as he finally got to hug Eve again. She then boasted, telling him that he's got to try some of the new dishes she learned. She then told him of the dishes she tried learning, but Brian seemed to be unhappy about it. She noticed it and asked if he was not interested. Not wanting to break his daughter's heart, he immediately agreed to try her cooking even against his will. Meanwhile, a figure can be seen speeding along the highway. It was Shin riding the bike he stole. No, the bike he borrowed rather. He was pedaling so hard that it summoned all the godly veins on his face. As Brian enjoyed his time with his daughter, Shin was stressing himself out as he pedaled harder and faster. Brian and Eve's father and daughter bonding was full of laughter, while Shin's pedaling was full of rage and stress. It was bedtime. Eve asked when can she have fun exploring B-Land. He told her to just relax and they can do it soon enough. His eyes were full of bitterness as he thought sending him back into a promising world. He then excused himself as he had a business to attend to. She smiled and assured that it was okay since she was about to sleep anyway. He looked back at her wearing a bitter smile. He stood up with thoughts of providing a better life for his daughter. He found himself at the library. A voice called his name, prompting him to turn back. It was Shin disguised as the messenger of the white heavenly fog. Deep in his mind, he should have left after he came so late. In actuality, Brian had just arrived, leading him to misunderstand that the messenger can sense his every movement and teleport immediately. He clenched his fist. What a monstrous man. He then asked him to reveal everything he knew about the light chaser. Brian began narrating that he has a disaster-grade strength together with wielding a powerful relic. It was revealed that he was of noble position who came to Bulang for unknown reasons. Shin told him that he arrived to kill the false god. He was surprised by this revelation. He never heard of him before. The messenger told him to investigate the light chaser and put his information into the book. He bowed and expressed his compliance to the order. He was sweating beads as he realized how truly terrifying the messenger's existence was. Shin commended him and said that he's looking forward to his findings. Deep inside, he was thinking that he'd better return the bicycle now. Back at the coffee shop, Shin's legs couldn't stop trembling. His legs were sore from all the pedaling he did back and forth. He slammed his hands against the table, whining about the sheer humiliation he experienced. It was a good thing that he never bumped into an acquaintance, or else he would explode for embarrassment. He heaved a sigh, remembering that he couldn't let his guard down. Suddenly, the soul orb hit his forehead. Turns out, Kolo was playing with it. The kitten caught the orb and landed on the table, striking a pose. Seeing the cat play, Shin remarked that it was so energetic even after getting vaxxed. He thought about having him muted, which frightened the fear off the cat. Days passed. It was the September 5th, the Exorcist Day festival. People usually dare not to go out at night, but it was different for this woman. While everyone locked themselves in fear of monsters, she was taking her sweet time strolling the night streets. Back at the cafe, Shin seemed dissatisfied as he browsed his phone. He don't know if there would be monsters, but he was certain there won't be any customers today. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from outside. He immediately went out to check, only to be greeted by the woman who was wandering around the streets. Outside the coffee shop, Shin asked the woman if she was all right. She closed her eyes and looked down. He invited her to come inside for some rest. Seeing her being hesitant, he assured her that he wasn't a bad person, but she still rejected, saying she was a monster. He was a bit surprised upon hearing this. Looking at her, he wondered those horns were real and not just an accessory. He patted her head saying it doesn't matter, and he may even be able to help her. He conjured flames in his hand, telling her that he wasn't an ordinary human either. She seemed to be caught off guard, to which he wondered why. She then inquired if it was true that he could really help her. Seeing her traits, he began wanting her to be employee in his shop. His eyes sparkled. Maybe this is the good luck brought to him by the ring. He snatched her hand and urged that they talk more inside. He immediately pulled him inside the shop, then left her to fetch something. He came back with a towel and wiped her hair. He then left again, then came back again to serve her a cup of warm coffee. After having everything ready, he asked her about what her circumstances were. She was speechless for a moment. She introduced herself as Tina, a freshman from the Belland Imperial College. It all began last week when her body underwent strange mutations. His eyes sparkled upon hearing this, but now her ears were back to normal. She seemed uncomfortable that Shin was staring at her. He apologized while she asked if he trusts her, to which he told her to just keep talking. It began when she came across books on the occult. He smirked. These death flags show no sign of ending. They tried practicing magic arts, but to no avail, leading to them losing interest. It was until last week that she noticed that her ears became hairy like those of animals. She said it was no big deal and asked if anything else special stood out to her. She revealed that she sometimes hears some inaudible babbling, as well as her unknown body traits changing daily. One example was that the horns on her head used to be beastly ears. She was so afraid when she learned of her situation and hid herself. She then revealed that Mr. White told her not to succumb to her mind's pressure, piquing Shin's interest as he asked if he ever mentioned the word miracle. She stared at him, speechless for a moment. He remembered that this Mr. White was also involved in the mutation incidents within the Absent Eyes Association. He told her that he was a problematic figure. He added that he knew over the wicked acts he committed before and asked for his whereabouts. However, this person only appears in her dreams. He was surprised upon hearing this. She added that she had dreams for the past 2 weeks where he would appear. He squinted his eyes after hearing what she said, remembering the dream spectator formula Chris gave him. However, he can't craft it yet since he lacks the potion ingredients. He was then alarmed after realizing something. Will she turn into a fishhead monster like the ones he encountered? Realizing the tragedy that awaits her, he slammed his hands on the table. He is now determined to find Mr. White in the dream world by himself. At the orphanage, Reena can be seen peeking through the door. She felt that she became wiser and was able to perceive things the average man could never perceive. She looks sad even though she had already grown more powerful. She has also already mastered low to mid-range intangible arts under the High Priest's tutelage. But being someone who can perceive the spiritual and supernatural, it was more like practicing tangible arts. She forced a smile on her face. There's no turning back now. She continued glancing at her peers from behind the door. A man in crimson cloak then approached and told her that the High Priest was waiting for her, to which she immediately went on her way. They finally arrived the room where the High Priest was waiting. She opened the door, then greeted the High Priest as she entered. She also called to the chairman who was kneeling with his head touching the ground. She told her that he should leave, to which he agreed. The High Priest turned his head to look, then told her that she had fulfilled all her request already. The orphans now have the freedom to learn and won't be forced into the order. She closed her eyes as she listened to him. She then expressed her gratitude, to which he said she could do so by thanking the Almighty. She remained speechless for a moment. He then told her that there will be a meeting next Monday, and she will have to follow. It was revealed that this meeting was their most important surface world operation in years. She remembered that he was the hook-nosed old man from the day of the attack. She asked if she was required to attend in person. It would be dangerous to get noticed by the Bureau after all. He assured her that it was just a simple surface world gathering. He whipped out a vial of the burning blood, wondering how to dilute it, all for the purpose of allowing others to bear the gift's power. He seemed to have gone crazy over his desire for power, prompting her to ask if she hadn't forgotten what she had said before. He assured her that he didn't, revealing that he had people investigate the affairs of the Absent Eyes. He then revealed that the Foundation was actually involved in the matter, surprising Reena. She knew that the Foundation is a behemoth who thrives behind the scenes of every national government. She then told them that she must report it to the Divine Messenger, then turned to walk away. The High Priest knew that Reena was being guided by God, allowing her to find the Divine Messenger through her insignia. He knew that it would be a sin to rashly seek the messenger without the guidance. He then mentioned the name of Lord Farrakos, a noble who owns a medical group. He told the priest to cancel the meeting with him since he had a lot on his plate right now. At the bed, Tina can be seen peacefully sleeping. She then woke up, then immediately checked her body for any signs that she was violated. She then blushed after realizing that she was having such impure thoughts for the Divine Messenger. Last night, she recalls bowing her head to him and expressing gratitude for saving her. He whipped out the ever-fading cross, a relic effective against curses. He thought of giving it to her once further mutation appears. She seemed uncomfortable that he was staring at her again. He told her to lie on the bed and stay well put, leading her to misunderstanding the situation. He smirked. This girl, she's sort of coy. The horns on the side of her head began shrinking, then they completely vanished. She then told him that she doesn't feel so good, to which he immediately gave her the cross. However, it manifested no effects. Suddenly, a pair of avian wings sprouted from her back, leading Shin to realize that her condition wasn't caused by a curse. He assured her that she won't have to worry so much about becoming a true monster, then urged her to go get some good rest. Back to the present, Tina approached Shin. Meanwhile, Shin was contemplating as Villad's soul orb does not have any memories relevant to her dilemma. She then told her that she doesn't want to go home. She was scared that her parents will find out. She then asked if he could help her in any way to hide her mutations. He thought of lending the shadow mask, but Tina definitely couldn't use it forever. He decided to lend her money so she can stay at a nearby hotel for now. Hearing that they will rent an inn, she blushed with those impure thoughts once again. He told her that he'll go and grab some baggy clothes to hide her wings before heading to the inn. After fetching Tina to the hotel unit, Shin went back to the shop as he contemplated the descriptions of Mr. White that Tina gave him. He held his chin. He sounds like a very difficult kind of person to deal with. He also needed to figure out the housing situation as Tina can't rent the inn for long. He was growing frustrated. Even housing problems were haunting him in another world. Suddenly, the door slammed open, spitting the enthusiastic image of Chris, who has already found a lead to the investigation. She happily told her that she had already found a lead, prompting him to praise her. He then offered her a cold brew cup of coffee, then clarifying that she must pay for this coffee. She happily said that she'd obviously pay his coffee. After a short while, he then served her coffee. She took a sip from her cup, then praised the almighty primordial flame for the delicious taste of the coffee. He then asked her to tell him what he had found so far. She narrated that the old man's death was caused by a member of the Butt family who demonstrated intangible arts. His mood turned serious as he said that was just how it was. She misinterpreted it as him knowing the information already and was just testing her. She believed for it to be the case and resolved herself to give a more serious report. It was revealed that Count Butt had always been in poor health, but has improved because of the effects of the intangible arts. He couldn't help but be amazed of her in-depth investigation in just a short time. When asked how she got those information, she revealed that she knew lots of people who witnessed it from near the slums. He then promised to reward her for a job well done. Her face couldn't hide the excitement of receiving the reward. He closed his eyes, thinking that he can't just rely on bluffs if he wanted to keep up with his act as the hidden mastermind. He held the soul orb in his hands, thinking of rewarding her with the summoning ritual magic from it. Her eyes sparkled as she prepared to receive the reward. The relic activated, forming into a screen that displayed the instructions for the intangible arts. Deep in her mind, she couldn't help but admire these high-grade intangible arts. She bowed her head and thanked him for the reward. He assured it was no big deal and that there will be more in the future. He then gave her a list of the ingredients for the Dream Spectator potion that she needs to gather. She received it and immediately complied. Even though those materials may cost her hundreds of thousands, she knew that it would all be worth it. She then realized something. Where did the ActionToon members got the backing to use the Dream Spectators so often? She brushed it off as an information Shin purposely omitted for her to investigate. She assured to look into the source of the ingredients as well as some clues about the mastermind. He gasped, only realizing that he failed to consider investigating the source of the materials. They then bid their farewell as she excused herself. Meanwhile, Lane can be seen traversing the streets as she looked for the light chaser. She resolved herself to keep him in check and make sure he doesn't cross the line. Back at the shop, Collar was happily playing around. The creaking of the door was then heard, spitting the image of Ling. The cat immediately showed hostility upon the sight of her. Shin greeted her, teasing her new clothes that pissed her off. He then turned to Collar in a threatening way, asking if he will harass the guests again. The scared kitten trembled in fear. She then told her that her clothes were meant to help her blend in with normal people. He then served her a cup of coffee, saying that he already have an answer to her request from before. It was a good thing that Chris came first to tell him the information. She was surprised at the speed of his investigation. She then remembered looking him up in the database. Turns out, the Anti-Magic Bureau kept an eye on him and was thinking highly of him. To top it all off, he was classified with a risk rating of untouchable. After reading all that, she could never see him as a human. Shin told him that the Butt family used some kind of intangible arts that led to the old man's death. She thanked him, then said she will tell him about the Light Chaser in exchange. He smiled, revealing that the Light Chaser was after the head of the false god. She was intrigued. Even the higher-ups in the Bureau don't know of the Light Chaser's motive. She began narrating the information about him, emphasizing that he's been investigating the mass mutation in the absent eyes. He smiled after learning another key information about him. She added that he had a little too much integrity and was not fit to be an investigator. He held his chin, wondering if he was actually a good guy. She then added that some members of the Foundation have arrived in B-Land recently. He fell silent for a moment, then smiled at her as he stood up. He then left, finally starting to piece together the bits of information he gathered. He was thinking that this Mr. White guy was the false god, or at least a related figure. He remembered the mass mutation incident as well as Tina's case. He wondered about the real intention of the false god who calls himself a miracle worker. A smirk formed on his lips. He's now intrigued. Shin was all dressed up as he told Collar to behave as he'll head out for a bit. It was 3 minutes past 3 a.m. and he was having realizations about the changes he brought to the world upon his transmigration. 3 days ago, Chris finally brought him 2 vials of the potion he wanted. He then told her to look after Tina for the next few days, to which she immediately expressed her enthusiastic compliance. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of satisfaction. She was indeed the perfect underling. While George seems to have left for the Badlands, he decides he must get in touch with Ling. He immediately whipped out his phone to deal with her issue right away. Back to the present, Lane was asking if they will carry out the ceremony directly in the inn. She was wondering what was up with his unusual attitude. He asked what she was muttering about, to which she brushed it off as nothing. She was having a lot of questions when she got cut off. He began turning into a mist, taking her by surprise. She saw him going seeping in through the tiny gaps in the door, then opened the locked door from the inside. She seemed pissed for God knows what reason. Inside was Tina, sleeping soundly in her bed as the two of them began preparing. She asked if she was a demi-human, creatures who are only seen in legends and rarely in the Badlands. He revealed that it was the work of the false god, then said that he only wanted for her turned back into normal. Ling began sweating as she realized that there was another brewing storm. Shin conjured flames on his index finger as he knelt beside Tina. It was revealed that exterior god aura can suppress the ravings within her mind. He forgot about Ling, who seemed fuming mad from behind. He whipped out the vials of Dream Spectator potion. He turned to her as they were about to start. He smiled as he handed one of the vials of Dream Spectator to her. He then leaned closer beside her ear and whispered something. She seemed surprised and told her that she got it. His facial expression turned serious as he looked at her. They began preparing for the dream spectating ritual. As time went by, the place was filled by fog and a whirring sound. A malicious figure wielding a sight showed up, ominously standing from the corner of the room. It has a big eyeball for a face, staring intently at its victims. Even the woman in the information desk was put to sleep by the mysterious fog it emitted. The mysterious entity passed through the walls like a ghost, silently sneaking by the sleeping woman at the information desk. It then went through the hallways, finally managing to find its way towards Tina's room. Its big eyeball stared intently at Shin, unleashing a malicious intent. It wielded its sight, then prepared to swing at them. He immediately activated his relic, transforming it into a cane, and broke the entity's teeth. He smiled, declaring that he knew it was coming. Turns out this was the thing he whispered to Tina earlier. He proceeded to taunt the entity, calling him disgusting. The entity was enraged as it charged forward, prompting him to swing his cane to counter. Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.